Hi guys. Tonight we set sail together into the uncertain vastness of the medieval ocean. You stand on the worn timbers of a creaking ship, the night pressing in on every side. There is no glowing GPS to reassure you, no weather forecast scrolling across a bright little screen, just stars pricked into a velvet sky, and the quiet knowledge that if you drift off course, you might not survive this voyage. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel so inclined, post your location and the local time in the comments. I always love to see where and when in the world you are listening. Now, dim the lights and let the wooden deck sway beneath your bare feet. You step forward into the salty air, and the ship groans as though it were alive. Around you, lanterns swing from ropes, their little flames shivering in the wind. Each flicker throws shadows across the deck, stretching the sailors' faces into tired masks. Some men pull at the rigging, their palms thick with calluses, while others slump against barrels, too weary to speak. You smell tar, fish oil, and the faint rank of sweat that clings to every sailor's wool tunic. It all mixes with the ocean's heavy perfume, a scent of brine, decay, and mystery. It's not pleasant, not unpleasant, just inevitable. One mainstream fact is this: medieval sailors set out into waters they barely understood, following coastlines when possible, terrified of the unknown seas beyond. But here you are, standing on a deck far from any shore, learning how fragile life feels when only timber separates you from the deep. The moonlight paints silver across the waves, but you sense no comfort there, only motion, constant and endless, pulling your body into its rhythm. You shift your weight, hearing the hollow knock of wood beneath your boots. The ship is alive with creaks, every rope groaning as the mast tilts. You try to imagine what sleep will be like, but your hammock waits in darkness below. For now, your task is simply to breathe and to be steady. A ship does not pause for dizziness or fear. A quirky tidbit slides into your mind. Some medieval sailors swore that eating garlic kept evil spirits away at sea. Others stuffed amulets into their pockets, bits of bone or seashells they thought might appease the waves. You notice one older sailor clutching a pouch around his neck, mumbling to himself as he stares at the stars. He won't admit what's in there, but you can guess it's not a rosary. The stars stretch overhead, sharp and cold. You lean back to count them, trying to spot familiar patterns, but the sky feels larger than your memory can hold. Historians still argue whether medieval crews truly knew how to navigate by the heavens, or if they only pretended, sailing more by instinct and luck. Either way, tonight you realize that even the brightest constellation looks like a puzzle, not a map. The ship rolls, and your stomach tightens. You press a hand against the railing, the wood sticky with salt. Somewhere in the dark water below, something splashes. Was it a fish? A piece of driftwood? You'll never know. The ocean keeps her secrets well. A younger sailor beside you whispers that monsters live here, serpents long enough to wrap around the hull. You half smile at the absurdity, but your eyes still dart back to the black waves just in case. You move aft, where the helmsman grips the steering oar. His knuckles are pale in the lantern glow. The rudder creaks with every swell, and he leans into it as though wrestling an invisible giant. His breath is steady, his jaw clenched. He's done this before, though you wonder if practice really makes it easier. Behind him, the wake shimmers faintly, a ghostly trail in the moonlight. It looks like a path, but one that vanishes the moment you step onto it. The air grows colder. You pull your cloak tighter, wishing for the heavy wool blanket waiting below. But even blankets can't warm the thought that this voyage could stretch for weeks, months, maybe longer. The sailors mutter about rations, about storms, about pay they'll never see if they drown. The words float on the wind, carried away into the night. You notice the rhythm of bells, faint but steady, marking the watch. Each toll reminds you of time's slow passage, of shifts and duties, of men taking turns staring into nothingness until dawn. The bells are comforting in their own way, a heartbeat of order, in a world where the sea cares nothing for rules. Your mind drifts, perhaps that is the point of these nights. To let your thoughts wander between the stars and the deck beneath you. You think of home, of familiar smells and laughter, and it aches like hunger. Sailors often carried tiny tokens, a scrap of cloth, a carved charm just to remind themselves they belong to somewhere solid. You finger the edge of your own sleeve, wishing it held such magic. As the hours stretch, your body grows heavy. You know soon you'll sink into the damp hammocks below, where sleep comes with creaks and snores, with vermin scratching at the corners. But for now, you linger on deck, watching as the stars wheel slowly overhead. You feel the ship breathe beneath you, rising and falling with the waves, as though it too is alive, carrying you forward into stories yet untold. The night is endless, and you are part of it now. Step by step, wave by wave, you drift deeper into the life of those who crossed oceans centuries ago, with little more than hope and stubbornness to guide them. You wake stiff and sore, your body aching from the hammock's awkward embrace. The faint glow of dawn creeps through the hatch above, but what really pulls you from half-sleep is the smell, pungent, dusty, almost sour. Breakfast, if you can call it that, waits on deck. Your stomach rumbles even as your nose wrinkles, because hunger leaves you with little choice. You shuffle up the narrow ladder, hand grazing rough wood sticky with tar. The sailors gather in a loose circle, voices groggy, eyes rimmed red. A barrel has been cracked open, and from it come small, rock-hard biscuits, hardtack, the legendary ration of medieval voyages. You're handed one, and at first it feels less like food than like a weapon. Square, dense, nearly unbreakable. You rap it against the railing, and it makes a sound closer to a stone than bread. The first bite is a shock. You don't really chew so much as grind. The biscuit explodes into dust and little fragments, dry enough to scrape your throat. No butter, no honey, no softness, just flour and water, baked until every hint of moisture has fled. Yet this brittle slab keeps for months, which is exactly why you're eating it. A mainstream fact: ships carried thousands of these biscuits, packed into barrels, because they were nearly indestructible and technically nutritious enough to keep men alive. You cough, swallow, and notice movement inside the bread. A weevil, tiny legs scuttling where your teeth just were. The sailor beside you shrugs, taps his biscuit on the table, and shakes out a handful of insects. Adds protein, he mutters with a grin. You laugh weakly, but your appetite falters. The quirky truth is that most sailors didn't bother picking out the bugs. They were too hungry, too used to it, and perhaps a little too superstitious about wasting what the sea grudgingly allowed. As you force down another mouthful, your mind wanders. Historians still argue whether these rations were meant to be eaten dry or soaked in broth, ale, or even seawater to soften the blow. On this deck, opinions clash. One sailor insists dunking it ruins the taste. Another swears by soaking it in wine, though wine at sea is a loose word, sour and sharp as vinegar. For now, you choke down the biscuit plain, throat scratchy, lips dry. You hear stories around you. An older man recalls biscuits crawling so thick with worms they wriggled in his beard when he took a bite. Another claims once, in desperation, the cook ground them up, mixed them with fat and dried peas and called it pudding. Everyone groans, then laughs, though you know none of them are really joking. The rhythm of ship life continues. Men bite, chew, gag, swallow. No one lingers over breakfast. No one expects pleasure here. The sound of crunching teeth, the occasional spit, the cough of dust. This is the music of the morning. You lick your cracked lips and wonder if your stomach will rebel, but hunger persuades you forward. You glance toward the officers' table, where the food looks slightly less cruel. Their biscuits are drawn from newer barrels, fresher by weeks or months, and perhaps flavored with a scrap of dried fruit. The contrast is clear. Already you sense that on this ship, meals divide rank as much as duty, but you're still too new to complain. You look at your biscuit again, and feel a strange mix of gratitude and despair. Gratitude because without it you'd starve. Despair because this is only day one of who knows how many. The barrel looms full, and you know the taste of dust and insects will follow you like a shadow. A seagull circles above the mast, crying sharp against the morning. You envy its freedom, its ability to fish fresh from the waves. Your own breakfast seems like punishment, as though survival itself must be earned one miserable bite at a time. Yet still you eat, still you endure, because out here you have no other choice. The bell tolls, and breakfast ends. Sailors scatter back to duty, wiping crumbs from their beards, spitting husks onto the deck. You clutch the last corner of biscuit in your hand, hard and small as a stone. You slip it into your pocket for later, though you already know it will taste worse when it turns damp with salt air. The sea stretches wide and indifferent. The ship creaks beneath your feet, and your belly, though not happy, is at least not empty. This is how medieval sailors began their days, chewing through stone disguised as bread, spitting out bugs, and carrying on with weary acceptance. It is a hard lesson. The ocean doesn't care how it feeds you, only that it tests your will to endure. The morning meal leaves grit in your teeth, and thirst gnaws harder than hunger. You reach for the nearest cask, a heavy barrel bound in iron hoops, and tilt a wooden ladle toward your lips. The first sip shocks you, not fresh, not cool, but stale and strangely sweet. Within days of leaving shore, the water already begins to sour. You cough, push it away, and stare at the barrel with suspicion. It's well documented that medieval ships carried vast amounts of water, yet no one expected it to stay clean. Stored in dark barrels, the liquid quickly grew slimy, tinged with algae or mold. Sailors described the taste as earthy, almost swamp-like, and still they drank, not because they wanted to, but because life on the sea allowed no alternatives. You hear whispers along the deck. Some men claim vinegar poured into the water slows the rot. Others insist that a dash of wine keeps illness away. An amusing, if unsettling, tale spreads about one captain who dropped a live eel into the barrel, believing it would stir the water and keep it fresh. Whether that worked or not, you'd rather not test. Chroniclers disagree on how effective these tricks really were. Some journals suggest vinegar barrels stayed potable for months, while others describe crews vomiting after only a few swallows. The truth probably lies somewhere between survival and superstition, where thirst won out over caution every time. You lift the ladle again, this time holding your breath. The liquid slides warm and murky over your tongue, leaving a metallic aftertaste. Around you, men don't complain. They gulp quickly, wipe their mouths, and return to work. You realize that expectation shifts at sea. What would disgust you at home becomes life itself here. And yet, a strange acceptance grows. The sourness becomes familiar, almost comforting in its inevitability. Each sip tells you that you are still alive, still afloat, still part of this small wooden world moving endlessly over the waves. The sour taste of the water lingers, so when a sailor presses a mug into your hands, you're almost grateful. The liquid inside foams faintly and carries a bitter, yeasty scent. It isn't clean water, it's ale, thin and weak, but safer to swallow. You sip, and warmth spreads across your chest, though it's more illusion than true comfort. On this ship, beer and wine aren't luxuries, they're survival. Contemporary accounts reveal that daily rations of alcohol were a fixture on medieval voyages. Ale, wine, or a crude fermented mixture was issued regularly, partly because it carried fewer pathogens than water, and partly because it dulled the misery of life at sea. You picture barrels lined neatly in the hold, guarded as carefully as the ship's weapons or charts. Without them, the crew might revolt. Yet odd habits always slip in. An older sailor demonstrates how he waters down his ale twice before drinking, stretching it across the day. Another insists on swirling a lump of stale biscuit in his mug, calling it ale soup. The smell is ghastly, but he eats with relish. And you remember hearing once of crews who spiced their wine with pepper or ginger, hoping to mask the taste of rot. The record is far from clear. Some researchers argue sailors relied more on beer than wine, while others claim wine dominated long-distance voyages, especially from Mediterranean ports. The evidence is contradictory, scattered across ship manifests and diaries that often exaggerate. What is certain is that without alcohol, morale fractured quickly and discipline turned fragile. You take another drink, ignoring the sourness. Around you, the men's shoulders relax. Conversation grows easier, even jovial. A shanty drifts across the deck, rough voices finding rhythm in the wind. It's clear that ale isn't just liquid sustenance. It is the glue that holds men together. Still, you sense the danger. One man slurs after only a few swallows, his balance wavering as the ship rolls. Another speaks too loudly, boasting of battles that may never have happened. Alcohol comforts, but it also loosens tempers. And in the cramped space of a ship, tempers can snap like rigging in a storm. You lean on the railing, staring into the waves. The sea smells sharp and briny, and the wind steals the last traces of ale from your lips. Your thoughts drift to tales of sickness, scurvy, fevers, flux, and you wonder if any of this truly keeps illness at bay. Men here cling to whatever scraps of belief they can. That wine purifies, that beer strengthens, that spirits calm. A barrel thumps against the deck as it's rolled into position. You watch sailors wedge it into place, hammering the bung tight, sealing away the precious ration. The sound echoes, like a drumbeat, promising one more day of endurance. One man wipes his brow and mutters, "As long as we've drink, we'll live." You can't tell if he believes it or if he's daring fate to prove him wrong. Later, as the sun sinks, the ritual repeats. Ladles dip, mugs clink, throats swallow. The ship feels lighter in spirit, even as darkness gathers. And you realize, this is more than nourishment. It is rhythm, tradition, and fragile hope, sloshing in a barrel. The wind sharpens, lanterns sway. Somewhere, the helmsman hums off-key, lips wet with ale. And you too let the warmth of your ration settle into your bones. It doesn't banish the cold. It doesn't erase the hunger, but it makes the night just bearable enough to endure. Your stomach growls again, louder this time, and when the cook's boy trudges across the deck with a steaming bucket, every head turns. The smell is unmistakable meat, salted so heavily it seems more mineral than animal. You shuffle closer, bowl in hand, and peer inside. What you see hardly looks inviting. Grey hunks of pork, stringy and hard, bobbing in a greasy broth. You dip your ladle anyway. Hunger makes you reckless. It's well attested in surviving ship inventories that salted meat, particularly pork and beef, formed the backbone of maritime diets in the Middle Ages. Animals were slaughtered on land, their flesh packed into barrels with coarse salt until every crevice was preserved. What emerged months later was less food and more riddle, edible, but requiring effort, imagination, and strong teeth to consume. You spear a piece with your knife, and it resists, rubbery under the blade. The first bite tastes overwhelmingly of salt, so strong your tongue recoils. Chewing brings little relief. The fibers cling together, and no amount of grinding seems enough. You wash it down with ale, throat burning slightly. The man beside you laughs, flashing teeth stained yellow. "Better than starving," he mutters, and shoves another strip between his jaws. What catches your attention is the improvisation. Sailors toss bits of onion or dried peas into the pot when they have them, hoping to soften the flavor. Others smear fat across their biscuit, making a crude sandwich. You've even heard tales of crews boiling meat in seawater not because it helped, but because fresh water was too precious to waste. The results, predictably, were abominable. An unusual story circulates about desperate voyages where horse meat was secretly salted and served. Some sailors swore they could taste the difference. Others swore it was only rumor. Even today, researchers remain divided over how often substitutions like this occurred. Some logs hint at mystery meat, while others stay suspiciously silent. Perhaps the truth lies lost, hidden in barrels, sunk with forgotten ships. You look back into your bowl. The broth has cooled quickly, a greasy skin forming across the top. You scrape it away with your spoon, though some men scoop it eagerly, claiming it keeps the chill away. You lift the liquid to your lips, and the taste is blunt. Salt, grease, smoke. Not pleasant, but filling in its own heavy way. The cook, red-faced and sweating, stands guard near the pot. His life is no easier than yours. Every complaint lands on his shoulders, though he has only what the quartermaster provides. You see him mutter under his breath, stirring the stew as if fighting the sea itself. He knows the truth. No matter how hard he works, no sailor will ever leave satisfied. You glance toward the officers again. Their portions gleam slightly richer, cuts of meat with more fat, sometimes a dash of imported spice. The inequality stings, though no one dares speak of it. The deck already knows the hierarchy. The sea enforces silence more effectively than any whip. As you chew, your teeth ache from the strain. You imagine sailors with mouths full of sores, gums bleeding, forced still to eat this salted flesh. It's no wonder sickness spread so quickly. Yet without these barrels, voyages would have ended within weeks. The very thing that sickened men also kept them alive. The air fills with clatter, knives scraping bowls, mugs thudding on planks, men sighing through full mouths. A kind of weary communion takes place. You all endure the same flavor, the same grim satisfaction. Conversation stirs memories of roasted lamb back home, fresh bread, steaming stews. For a moment, you can almost taste those feasts. Then the ship rocks, your broth sloshes, and the dream fades. By the time you finish, your lips are cracked with salt, your fingers greasy. You wipe them on your tunic, already stiff with stains. The bucket scrapes empty, men licking their knives clean. One sailor belches loudly, another curses softly, though neither truly complains. Out here, the definition of a meal is stretched thin, and gratitude becomes compulsory. As the sun lowers, you sense how fragile contentment is at sea. One spoiled barrel, one storm washing provisions overboard, and this salt-soaked feast becomes memory. You clutch your bowl, feeling the hunger return already. The ocean, vast and indifferent, demands much and offers little. You rise, bones creaking, and glance once more at the pot. Only streaks of grease remain. The cook slams the lid down, muttering something about tomorrow. You don't envy him. Tonight you'll sleep with the taste of brine still coating your tongue, and tomorrow you'll wake to it again. This is the rhythm of life in the middle of the ocean, chewing through flesh hardened by salt, drinking broth that never truly satisfies, and learning, each day, how to quiet the part of your mind that remembers feasts left behind. The taste of salted pork clings to your tongue, but the ship never lets your senses rest. By midday, the cook is already hammering lids off other barrels, scavenging whatever scraps remain. This time, the meal takes a stranger form, something resembling stew, though you suspect the word is used generously. One detail noted in several surviving journals is that shipboard cooks often improvised dishes with whatever they had: meat scraps, biscuit crumbs, dried peas, and sometimes fish caught over the side. When combined in a single pot, the result was a lumpy concoction sailors called sea pie, or, more optimistically, cabin broth. The smell wafts across the deck, an oily mix of onion peel, pork fat, and something you cannot name. You edge closer, bowl ready, and when the ladle dips, what lands in your dish looks like mud peppered with lumps. You stare, but hunger insists. The first spoonful burns your tongue, and behind the salt you detect odd flavors, bitter and earthy. Someone laughs, pointing to a grey streak floating in the pot. "Rat tail," he jests, and you almost choke. Strange anecdotes of rodents in the cook's stew appear in sailors' tales, though modern historians remain uncertain whether this was common practice or merely dark humor. Some suggest desperate crews really did add vermin to their meals, while others believe such stories were exaggerated to shock listeners ashore. Either way, the joke lands heavily on your stomach. Yet there's invention here too. A man tears biscuit into crumbs, soaking them in the broth until they swell like dumplings. Another sprinkles herbs he keeps hidden in a pouch, transforming his portion with a fragrance almost pleasant. You envy him. Perhaps spices were worth more than coin on voyages like this. Around you, men swap bowls, comparing textures, pretending this stew is variety. A young sailor grins, boasting that it tastes like the soups of his childhood. You doubt him, but you don't argue. Sometimes belief is as nourishing as food itself. The cook wipes sweat from his brow, stirring with exaggerated effort. His ladle clinks against the pot, and the sound becomes almost rhythmic, like a drum keeping time against the sea's endless motion. You imagine him as priest and executioner, both dispenser of life and architect of indigestion. No one dares offend him. Conflicting records leave us guessing about how much creativity cooks actually had. Some argue they produced near-inedible slop day after day. Others point to surprising recipes like peas pottage, thickened with lard, or dried fish spiced with mustard seed. The truth likely shifted with each ship, each voyage, and each exhausted hand at the pot. You scrape the bottom of your bowl, where grease gathers like a film. It coats your lips, leaving you queasy. Still, warmth spreads through your chest, and you know the stew has done its job. One meal closer to survival. One more reminder that endurance tastes nothing like pleasure. The men drift back to work, leaving bowls stacked, spoons clattering. You set yours aside, stomach unsettled yet strangely satisfied. In the middle of the ocean, a meal like this is not a choice. It's the glue that keeps bones moving, ropes hauled, sails trimmed. And so you carry on, with the aftertaste of questionable stew lingering, and the uneasy thought that tomorrow's recipe might surprise you even less kindly. The afternoon sun slants low, and with it comes the gnawing emptiness that salted meat and strange stews never quite silence. A whisper spreads across the deck. The nets are going out. You hurry to the rail, eager for anything fresh, anything not salted into leather or crawling with worms. Logbooks from long voyages often mention how crews relied on the ocean itself to supplement rations. Nets, lines, and even harpoons were cast, pulling in whatever the waves surrendered fish of every size, sea turtles, the occasional dolphin, and, if fortune failed, nothing but seaweed clinging to the ropes. For a moment, your heart quickens. Perhaps tonight you will eat something that still remembers life. The net splashes, ropes running rough across calloused palms. Men grunt, strain, and heave, voices overlapping in chants meant to summon strength. The water foams, and at last the mesh breaks the surface, heavy with writhing silver shapes. Fish spill onto the deck, slapping and gasping, scales glinting in the sun like scattered coins. Sailors shout, laugh, stomp to still them. The smell, sharp, briny, unmistakably alive, floods your senses. You seize one small fish, hands slippery with slime. The cook snatches it away, tossing it into a pot already bubbling. Others carve fillets with quick, careless cuts, chewing them raw in defiance of danger. It was not unusual. Many crews believed fresh catch kept illness away, though whether that truly staved off scurvy remains debated among medical historians. Amid the excitement, darker tales creep in. An older mariner murmurs about voyages where the ocean gave nothing for weeks, hunger-twisting men toward desperate choices. Whispers of cannibalism haunt the conversation, unconfirmed, half-believed, but chilling nonetheless. Chroniclers disagreed whether these stories were truth or terror, but even rumor has power here, enough to quiet the laughter for a breath. You focus on the stew pot, steam rising fragrant this time. The fish soften quickly, their flesh delicate compared to the salted horrors you've grown used to. Someone tosses in a chunk of turtle meat, its fat hissing as it melts. The aroma grows rich, almost luxurious. You inhale deeply, feeling hunger sharpen into anticipation. Bowls are filled, hands outstretched. When yours comes, you sip cautiously, then greedily. The broth is hot, smooth, carrying the flavor of the sea itself, bright, clean, alive. You close your eyes and let it linger. For once, the food does not feel like punishment. For once, you believe you could endure this life. Men around you beam, teeth flashing, eyes bright. Jokes return, songs rise, and the ship feels lighter. It is astonishing how quickly mood shifts when food tastes of joy rather than survival. The difference between despair and hope, it seems, can be measured in a single fresh meal. As the sun dips, lanterns flicker to life. Fish bones are tossed overboard, gulls shrieking as they dive. You lick your bowl clean, unwilling to waste a drop. Around you, men sigh with contentment, a rare sound on these waters. The ocean has provided today. Tomorrow it may not. You glance at the horizon, where the sky glows red and the waves breathe steadily. For this night at least, your stomach is full, your spirits lifted. The sea has reminded you that it can give as well as take, though never without a price. The warmth of the fish stew still lingers in your stomach when the division of the evening meal begins. You're quick to notice that not every sailor eats the same way, not by quantity, not by quality, not even by the vessel in which the food is served. The ocean may seem like an equalizer, tossing everyone together on the same fragile wooden deck, but here hierarchy is as solid as oak beams. Accounts from medieval voyages make it clear that meals reflected status. Captains and officers often enjoyed better cuts of meat, fresher biscuits, and wine drawn from barrels unopened by common hands. Meanwhile, ordinary sailors like you in this story gnawed stale rations, sometimes crawling with vermin. The food was not only nourishment but also a constant reminder of your place in the ship's order. You sit cross-legged on the deck, cradling a rough wooden bowl. Around you, shipmates do the same, scraping their knives across hard biscuit, dunking pieces into lukewarm broth. There's no tablecloth, no chair, just the open sky above and the planks beneath your legs. A few paces away, the officers dine at a small table near the stern, plates of pewter gleaming faintly in the lantern light. Their portions look subtly richer, meat less sinewy, bread less stale, perhaps a splash of spice. The difference is enough to sting. One odd custom catches your eye. An officer flicks a morsel of meat to a favored sailor, a gesture part kindness, part display of power. The sailor grins, pocketing it for later, and the others pretend not to notice. Such tiny exchanges could win loyalty or breed resentment. Stories exist of mutinies sparked not by pay or punishment, but by the sight of officers feasting while men starved. Researchers examining naval records still debate just how wide this gap truly was. Some insist captains ate little better than their crews, constrained by the same limited stores. Others argue that officers hoarded luxuries like dried fruit, sugar, or imported spices, keeping them hidden for private use. The truth may depend on the ship, the voyage, and the discipline of the men in charge. You nibble at your biscuit, listening to the scrape of teeth around you. No one speaks of the officer's table aloud, though glances stray there often. Hunger sharpens envy, but discipline demands silence. A ship survives only when its fragile balance of order holds, and food is part of that balance. The soundscape is telling. Officers' quiet laughter carries from the stern, contrasting with the grunts and sighs among the common deck. Even the spoons make different music, metal against pewter in one corner, wood against wood in the other. You notice it all, and the divide feels as wide as the ocean itself. One sailor beside you mutters a prayer before biting his ration. Another crosses himself quickly, as if ashamed. Rituals cling to meals, even meager ones. Perhaps it is habit from home, or perhaps here on the open sea, superstition becomes seasoning of its own. You whisper nothing, but you do think of bread warm from an oven, of roasted fowl with crisp skin, of feasts now far beyond reach. When your bowl is empty, you scrape it clean with your thumb. Across the deck, an officer pushes back his chair, wiping his lips with a cloth. For a moment your eyes meet, and in that silent exchange you feel the unspoken truth. Even adrift in the same waters, some are meant to command and others only to endure. The ship sways, lanterns swinging, casting long shadows between stern and bow. That darkness feels symbolic, a gulf stretching not just across planks but across lives. You gather your bowl, your hunger dulled but not contented, and return it to the cook's boy. He does the same for both ranks, yet you know his loyalty bends toward those who eat from pewter. Still, you find a strange peace in this rhythm. Division is part of life here, as much a fixture as the creaking mast or the endless waves. And perhaps, in this ordered inequality, lies the fragile thread keeping the voyage intact. You stretch out your legs, watching the last embers of daylight fade. The officers retreat to their quarters, while sailors settle on deck, muttering stories to one another. The sea hums beneath you, constant, impartial. For all the divides above, it is the ocean that rules. And tonight, as hunger gives way to weary calm, you realize the sea has one lesson. Survival tastes different, depending on your place at the table. The sky bruises into darkness, and with it comes the rhythm of the night watch. Bells toll faintly from the quarterdeck, the metal sound carrying through the salt air. You stand, shifting your weight as the ship rolls, and prepare yourself for the long hours ahead. Contemporary seafaring records describe the watch system as the backbone of order at sea. Time was carved into segments, often 4-hour shifts, each marked by the steady striking of bells. These bells kept the ship awake and alive, ensuring no moment passed without eyes on the horizon, hands on the rigging, and ears tuned to the creak of the hull. The lanterns sway above you, their flames shivering with every gust. Their light paints the deck in flickers, faces half seen, ropes glinting like serpents, barrels looming as shadows. The watch feels more like a haunted vigil than simple labor. You breathe deeply, the air cool and tinged with smoke from the lantern wicks, mixed with the constant brine. Every inhalation tastes faintly of iron and salt. An odd little detail passes among the men. Some sailors believe whistling in the dark summons foul weather. So, in this silence, you notice how lips stay sealed, even among the board. Instead, the crew hums low songs or taps fingers against wood, creating rhythms to fight fatigue. These tiny gestures form a language of survival, unwritten but understood. Scholars continue to puzzle over how accurately bells were kept on medieval ships. Some argue that the rolling of the vessel and the constant damp made precise timekeeping impossible, while others believe the crew managed well enough by instinct and habit. Either way, the result is the same. You feel each toll as both comfort and burden. Comfort, because it means someone else counts the hours for you. Burden, because each strike reminds you how much longer remains until dawn. The ship groans as if alive, timbers creaking under the strain of endless water. You run your palm along the railing. It's rough with splinters, sticky with salt. Every sound magnifies in the night. The scrape of rope, the distant crash of waves, even the breath of the man beside you. A sneeze explodes suddenly, startling everyone, then dissolves into laughter muffled by weary throats. Your eyes drift to the horizon. Out there is nothing but black water stretching into black sky. Sometimes the two blur until you feel suspended in an endless void. Stars prick the heavens, tiny flames of guidance, but whether they lead or merely mock is uncertain. You hear one sailor swear that a falling star foretells calm seas, while another insists it means death aboard. Both stories make you shiver. The longer you stand, the more your body protests. Your legs ache, your back stiffens, and your eyelids droop heavy. The temptation to close your eyes even for a moment is immense. But one slip, one inattentive gaze, and danger can strike. A reef unseen, a sail torn, a storm rolling in from the horizon. So you fight against your body, clinging to awareness as if it were a rope in a storm. A rat scurries across the deck, its claws clicking faintly on the planks. A sailor hurls a boot at it, missing, and curses under his breath. You chuckle quietly, reminded again that this ship is no palace but a floating village of men, beasts, and pests, all bound together by necessity. The helmsman's silhouette looms at the stern, steady hands gripping the tiller. His posture is rigid, but you catch a faint hum under his breath, an old hymn perhaps, or merely a tune to keep sleep at bay. You find comfort in that sound, as if his voice ties you all to safety. Somewhere above, a lookout calls softly, pointing toward a faint glow on the horizon. It's the moon breaking through clouds, casting silver across the waves. For a moment, the world feels transformed, black water turning to shimmering quicksilver, the ship's sails glowing pale and ghostly. You inhale sharply, struck by the eerie beauty. But beauty here is fleeting. The moon slips back behind cloud, and darkness closes in once more. The lanterns seem dimmer now, the cold sharper. You rub your arms and glance toward the nearest bell. Still more hours remain. You wonder if time itself stretches longer at sea, each minute dragged thin by monotony and fear. A yawn escapes you, long and weary. The sailor beside you nods in sympathy. Together you endure, leaning into the silence, into the creak of timbers and the slap of waves. This is the essence of the night watch. Not excitement, not glory, but the slow, grinding patience of men standing guard against a world that never sleeps. At last, the bell strikes again, signaling a shift change. Relief sweeps across the deck as fresh faces climb up from below, blinking into the night. You hand over your post with a tired nod, your body heavy, your mind fogged. The watch continues without you as it always does, as it must. You descend into the shadows below deck, ears still ringing faintly with the toll of bells. The rhythm follows you into the dark, a reminder that out here, time belongs not to you, but to the sea. You descend into the belly of the ship, where the air thickens and the light dwindles to a faint, smoky glow. The lanterns down here barely illuminate more than a few feet, casting yellow halos against damp timbers. The smell hits you first: sweat, mildew, tar, and the faint, sour reek of men's unwashed bodies packed far too close. Welcome to the place where sailors sleep. It is well attested in shipboard accounts that hammocks, slung between beams or hooks, became the most common bed for medieval and early modern sailors. Before hammocks, men sometimes slept directly on the deck, rolling themselves in cloaks like discarded bundles. The hammock, though crude, offered an advantage. It swayed with the ship, sparing bodies from the full brutality of waves slamming against hulls. You run your hand along the rough canvas, stiffened with salt, and wonder whether this contraption will cradle you or simply strangle you in your sleep. The space is crowded, hammocks strung side by side, barely an arm's width between them. You climb into yours awkwardly, body tilting as the canvas dips beneath your weight. The ropes creak. At first you fear falling, but the sway quickly steadies, carrying you like a child rocked too roughly in its cradle. Some men have customized their hammocks. One ties scraps of cloth at the edges to create pockets. Another stuffs his with spare rags for padding. You envy them. Yours is bare, rough against your skin, smelling faintly of mildew. Still, compared to the hard planks of the deck, it feels almost luxurious. Almost. You glance around. Men shift, mutter, cough. Snores rise in uneven rhythm, competing with the groan of the ship's hull. A lantern swings, and its glow briefly reveals a forest of limbs dangling from hammocks, calloused feet, scarred hands, hair matted with sweat. Privacy here is as rare as fresh fruit. One odd practice you notice is the way some sailors sleep fully clothed, boots still strapped, knives tucked under belts. They claim it spares them the panic of scrambling barefoot should a storm or battle strike suddenly in the night. Others strip to their shirts, desperate for relief from the stifling air. You wonder which habit makes more sense, but before you can decide, the ship lurches, and your hammock pitches violently. There's disagreement among scholars about how restful sleep truly was in such conditions. Some argue hammocks offered genuine relief, rocking men into deeper slumber than rigid bunks ever could. Others insist the constant damp, the noise, and the proximity of vermin ensured exhaustion rather than rest. You feel both theories tugging at you, comfort in the sway, discomfort in every other sense. The deck above thunders as men change watch, the vibrations traveling into your bones. You close your eyes, willing yourself to drift, but your mind wanders. You think of your home bed, the softness of linen sheets, the quiet of four walls. Here, even the silence is noisy, full of groans, creaks, whispers, and the ever-present slap of waves. A rat scurries across a beam overhead. You open your eyes just in time to see its tail vanish into shadow. A shiver runs through you. Some men claim rats are lucky, a sign the ship won't sink, since the creatures would flee before disaster. Others curse them as harbingers of plague. Either way, they are constant companions, rustling in corners, nibbling at crumbs, even biting exposed toes. Your hammock rocks gently, though gentle is generous. The ship pitches, and your body swings in arcs, stomach lurching. Some sailors mutter prayers when the swaying grows too fierce, clutching their rosaries or amulets. You have neither, so you clutch the canvas edge, knuckles white. The air grows thick as the lantern sputters. Darkness presses close, broken only by the glow of a pipe ember as someone smokes in secret. You cough quietly, hoping the smoke won't choke you. The hammock beneath you groans as you shift, trying to ease the ache in your back. Already, your muscles complain from a day of hauling ropes and chewing salted meat. Somewhere near your head, a man begins to hum a slow, tuneless sound. Others grumble for silence, but the humming continues, weaving into the creak of wood and the hiss of waves outside. Oddly, it soothes you. Perhaps you think, this is the closest thing to a lullaby sailors know. Your eyelids grow heavy. The ship rocks, the canvas cradles you. The sounds merge into a strange symphony. For a moment, you think you might actually sleep. Then a shout erupts above deck, followed by the rush of feet. The hammocks sway wildly as men jolt upright, curses flying. Your heart races, though no danger reaches below. It is only the routine of the night watch. But fear does not care for explanations. When calm returns, so does the slow rocking. You exhale, forcing your muscles to unclench. Around you, snores rise again, some wheezing, some rattling, some so deep they sound like growls. You smile faintly, realizing the ship itself seems to breathe with its crew. Sleep does not come easily, but eventually, fatigue claims you. Your dreams blur with reality stars wheeling above, waves crashing below, hammocks swaying like pendulums in the dark. And when at last you drift away, it is not into peace, but into the uneasy rest that keeps men alive, night after night, in the middle of the unforgiving sea. The hammock cradles you for only a few hours before you stir awake, not from a call to duty, but from the sheer assault on your senses. Down here, beneath the deck, sleep is rarely gentle. You breathe in the stale air, thick with layers of sweat, damp wool, smoke, and tar. The mingling of odors clings to your nostrils until you almost taste it, metallic and sour. Privacy is an illusion. You are pressed into community with every sound, every smell, every restless body around you. Voyage records remind us that sleeping quarters on medieval ships were little more than crowded corridors. Men lay shoulder to shoulder, hammocks strung so close their occupants could feel each other's movement in the dark. Rest was communal, whether you welcomed it or not. Tonight you learn the truth of those accounts as someone's elbow jabs your side, another man's snores rattle like a saw, and footsteps thud overhead as the next watch shifts. A curious custom unfolds nearby. One sailor ties a scarf across his eyes, swearing it shields him from nightmares. Another rubs garlic on his skin, claiming it wards off rats. You wrinkle your nose at the acrid scent, but decide, perhaps he is not foolish. You hear squeaks in the rafters even now. Among historians, there's ongoing debate about whether sailors truly slept through the night or only snatched rest in fragments. Some argue the body adapted to the rhythm of watches, drifting in and out with the tolling of bells. Others believe men were perpetually exhausted, their rest so broken, it never quite restored them. You lie awake, heart thudding, and feel inclined toward the latter view. The chorus of sleep around you grows louder. A man nearby wheezes with each breath, his lungs rattling as though filled with seawater. Another grinds his teeth, a grating noise that makes your jaw clench in sympathy. Someone mutters in his dreams, words tumbling incoherently but with a tone that sounds fearful. You wonder what visions trouble him: storms, hunger, or ghosts from home. The hammock sways gently, but with each pitch of the ship, the motion amplifies into jerks that jolt your stomach. You grip the edges, imagining for a moment that you might be flung onto the floor. Men have been known to tumble in heavy weather, waking with bruises or worse. To guard against it, some lash themselves lightly to the canvas, a rope across the chest. You consider doing the same, though the thought of binding yourself in this sweltering air seems unbearable. What strikes you most is the intimacy of this setting. You share more of yourself here: snores, sweat, sighs, than you would with family at home. You hear everything, feel everything, smell everything. Privacy vanishes into the ship's breath. Even your dreams are communal, stolen by the mutters and coughs of those around you. Someone stirs, swinging out of his hammock to relieve himself in a bucket. The scrape of wood, the splash, the muttered curse all unfold in plain hearing. No curtain hides the act. No space allows modesty. You turn your head, pretending to be asleep, though your senses refuse to grant you the courtesy. Oddly, there's a comfort in this shared discomfort. You realize the men here know one another more closely than brothers. Every weakness, every bodily function, every muttered dream is laid bare. On land you might recoil. At sea, it is simply life. A memory from shore surfaces: your own bed, linens crisp, silence heavy as a blessing. You long for it, ache for it. But here, the sounds and smells are inescapable. The ship is not a home, not a haven. It is a body in itself, and you are merely another organ, functioning within its crowded belly. As the night stretches on, you find yourself listening less with annoyance and more with curiosity. The snores fall into rhythm with the waves. The creak of hammocks becomes like wind in branches. The muttered dreams turn into a chant, indecipherable, yet oddly soothing. You realize the ship sings in its own strange way, a chorus of men and wood and sea. By the time the bell tolls again, summoning the next shift, you have not truly slept, but you have drifted. Your limbs feel heavy, your eyes roar, but you rise nonetheless. Fatigue is the natural state here. Rest is never whole, only borrowed in fragments, snatched between the groans and the stench. You swing out of the hammock, feet slapping the damp planks. Your tunic clings to your skin, soaked with sweat from the humid air. Around you, men rouse sluggishly, scratching, coughing, yawning. No one pretends they are refreshed. You tie your belt, pat your pockets, and head for the ladder. Above deck, the air feels shockingly fresh, though it reeks of tar and salt. Compared to below, it might as well be perfume. You draw in a long breath, grateful for space, for sky, for distance from the symphony of sleep. But you know night will return, and with it, the hammocks will sway again, pressing you back into the unyielding intimacy of life at sea. The memory of restless hammocks still clings to your limbs when the storm arrives. It comes not as a gentle warning, but as a sudden fist. The ship lurches, timbers groan, and your body is hurled sideways, canvas biting into your ribs. Men shout in the dark, scrambling upright, clutching ropes, boots thudding onto wet planks. Sleep scatters like frightened birds. Travel journals from the period often remark that storms could erase every trace of comfort on board. Even the most hardened sailor was reduced to trembling prayers when the sea rose in fury. Tonight, you discover why. The ship bucks and dips like a living thing, the hammock tossing you violently until you untangle yourself, spilling onto the slick floorboards. Around you, chaos blooms. Lanterns swing wildly, their flames guttering, shadows lunging across beams. Barrels roll, slamming into walls, sending echoes through the hull. Somewhere above, a rope snaps with a sharp twang, followed by curses that vanish into the roar of wind. You scramble to your feet, heart pounding, and brace yourself against a post as the vessel shudders. One sailor near you clutches a rosary, lips moving quickly. Another crosses himself, then clings to his hammock as though it could anchor him. Others shout half-coherent commands, panic thick in their voices. Oddly, a few men laugh, a hysterical edge in the sound, as though amusement could mask terror. You realize storms don't just threaten the ship, they test the minds aboard. Different chroniclers describe the impact of storms with conflicting detail. Some insist crews kept discipline, moving like cogs in a well-oiled machine. Others depict near mutiny, with men crying out that the sea was cursed, that gods or demons punished them. You see pieces of both tonight. The disciplined scramble on deck, the fearful whispers below, each man torn between duty and dread. You climb the ladder, emerging into a world transformed. Rain slashes sideways, stinging your face. The wind howls like a beast, ripping at the sails, which thrash violently despite men hauling them down. Waves rise taller than houses, their white crests glowing briefly in flashes of lightning. The ship mounts one, pauses, then plunges, timbers shrieking as though they might crack apart. Your stomach lurches with each drop, your teeth rattling from the impact. You grab a rope, knuckles white, and force yourself to look around. The deck is chaos. Men slip, skid, slam into railings. Orders are shouted, half heard in the roar. As the captain braces at the stern, his voice raw. Water floods across planks, icy against your ankles, then your knees. You feel it drag, trying to pull you out into the abyss. One peculiar ritual catches your eye. A sailor spits defiantly into the wind, muttering an oath to Neptune. Another slaps the mast 3 times, begging it to hold. These gestures seem absurd in the tempest, yet no one mocks them. When death looms this close, every superstition becomes survival. The storm rages for what feels like forever. Your body shakes with exhaustion, arms burning as you cling to ropes, legs bruised by barrels smashing loose. Rain blinds you, lightning sears your vision, thunder cracks your ears. Still, the ship endures, groaning but refusing to break, and you endure with it, though every heartbeat feels borrowed. At last, gradually, the fury slackens, the wind weakens to a moan, the waves shrink, the rain softens. Dawn creeps in, pale and trembling, illuminating the wreckage, torn ropes, shattered barrels, men sprawled across the deck, faces pale with fatigue. Some whisper thanks to God, others slump in silence. You breathe heavily, drenched and aching but alive. Debate lingers among historians about how often medieval ships truly succumbed to storms. Some argue the vessels were sturdier than we imagine, their design surprisingly resilient. Others point to endless records of wrecks, lives swallowed whole by the sea. Looking at the battered deck, you feel both arguments pulse together. Survival tonight feels miraculous, yet precarious. You descend below again, limbs heavy, body trembling with cold. The hammocks sway gently once more, no longer violent, just rocking as if to soothe. Men crawl into them without hesitation, collapsing instantly. You follow, curling into the damp canvas, your skin sticky with salt and sweat, your eyes closed despite yourself. The storm still echoes in your ears, thunder embedded in memory, but the exhaustion is deeper than fear. As you drift, you realize storms like this strip life to its core. Food, rank, superstition, none of it matters when waves rise to swallow everything. What remains is this: the creak of timbers holding firm, the shared prayers of desperate men, and the fragile peace that comes after fury. You wake to a different kind of torment, not thunder or lightning, but the quiet persistence of discomfort. The storm has passed, yet the air below deck feels heavier than ever. Moisture clings to the timbers, dripping in slow rivulets. Your hammock is damp, your tunic clammy against your skin. The ship never truly dries. Here, wetness is as constant as the creak of ropes. It's well recorded in sailors' memoirs that dampness was a daily enemy at sea. Without modern ventilation, ships became humid caverns, and every surface grew slick with condensation. Bedding rotted, clothes soured, boots stiffened with mold. The very air seemed to chew at a man's health. You feel it in your chest, each breath tastes of mildew, as if the ocean itself has seeped into your lungs. You scratch absent-mindedly at your ankle, and realize the itch is more than fabric. Fleas, tiny legs crawling across your skin, biting, leaving behind welts that swell and burn. The sailor in the hammock beside you curses softly, slapping at his arm. You both know the truth. Vermin own this ship as much as men do. Rats scamper freely in the dark, fattened on crumbs, gnawing into barrels, even scuttling across sleeping bodies. A curious practice emerges in response. Some sailors tuck garlic or herbs into their hammocks, believing the smell repels pests. Others hang little pouches of tar or pitch near their bedding. Whether it works or not is doubtful, but at least it gives them the illusion of control. You try swatting instead, though the fleas always return, unbothered by your efforts. Scholars continue to argue over just how filthy these ships truly were. Some accounts exaggerate, describing vermin swarms so thick that hammocks writhed with life. Others suggest conditions varied. Better captains demanded stricter cleaning, poorer crews sank into squalor. Tonight, as you scratch your neck and hear a rat squeak from the shadows, you suspect the worst stories might not have been exaggerations at all. The smell worsens when the latrine bucket tips in the ship's roll, spilling across the planks. Men groan, some cursing, others laughing grimly. No one bothers to clean it immediately. There is no clean here, only less filthy. The stench mixes with tar and sweat, an alchemy that makes your eyes sting. Sleep becomes impossible. You rise, stepping gingerly on the slick boards, and duck toward the hatch. Above deck, the air hits like salvation, cold, sharp, salted, but free of rot. You gulp it in greedily, filling your lungs until they ache. Around you, other men do the same, clambering up just to breathe. Oddly, even here the vermin follow. Rats dart across coils of rope, bold under the open sky. One sailor hurls a knife, missing, and the rat vanishes into shadows. He curses, then shrugs. Some men whisper that rats are lucky that they sense disaster before it comes. Better to have them aboard than not at all. You wonder if that's superstition, or a strange sort of gratitude. The deck bears scars from the storm ropes, frayed, sails torn, barrels smashed. Yet already the crew works to repair, barefoot men hauling lines, their feet blackened with tar. You lean against the rail, scratching at another flea bite, and realize the ocean gives no time for comfort. You survive, you mend, you endure. Complaints mean little. The sea does not hear them. Below deck, the hammocks sway again, still damp, still pungent. You know you must return to them tonight, that fleas and rats will greet you as surely as waves slap the hull. And yet, you find yourself oddly resigned. The ship is not meant for rest, nor for comfort. It is a world where vermin and men share the same space, each clinging to survival in their own way. As the sun dips, casting long streaks of red across the horizon, you scratch one last bite and sigh. Life out here is raw, itchy, unclean. And yet, the voyage continues, one damp night after another, until land or fate breaks the cycle. The sun lifts slowly, a pale coin in the morning haze. and with it comes the measured sound of a bell. The toll is hollow, echoing across the deck, and men stir as if pulled by invisible strings. You watch closely, realizing that this single sound governs every hour of life here. Shipboard documents and coastal chronicles reveal that bells, or sometimes the beat of a drum, were the clocks of the medieval sea. Mechanical timepieces were rare and unreliable in damp conditions, but the ship's bell rang with steady insistence. It divided the day into watches, usually 4 hours each, carving order into the chaos of water and wind. For sailors, time was not a number, but a rhythm, punctuated by sound. The bell tolls again, and you feel its vibration in your chest. A young sailor wipes sleep from his eyes, muttering that the watch has changed. Another yawns, tying his boots without looking. The routine is automatic, learned so deeply that it overrides weariness. Yet in the back of your mind you wonder, how precise is this system really? Historians still debate the accuracy of timekeeping aboard ships. Some argue sailors relied more on instinct and experience than strict measurement, adjusting watches by the sun or stars. Others insist that bells were rung with remarkable discipline, each half-hour marked by turning a sandglass. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between, imperfect yet consistent enough to keep the voyage moving. A curious superstition surfaces as you watch. One man taps the bell gently before his shift, whispering a blessing. Another refuses to touch it at all, claiming the sound itself wards off bad luck. You smile faintly. Even a lump of metal becomes sacred when it controls your hours, your labor, your chance at rest. The deck bustles now. Men climb into the rigging, their movements timed to the rhythm of orders barked in measured intervals. Others scrub planks with holystones, grinding the deck clean to the scrape of stone on wood. The sound matches the beat of the bell, as though every task has its own cadence. Life here is not free-flowing. It is metered, mechanical, yet strangely comforting. You glance skyward. Clouds smear the horizon, pale streaks tinged with pink. The sails flap, catching the early wind. You notice how often men glance up too, not at the sky's beauty, but at its hints. Is the wind steady? Are storms brewing? The bell tells them when to look, when to act, when to pause. Without it, perhaps days would blur into one endless stretch of ocean. One sailor beside you scratches his beard and mutters, "The sea bends time. You think you've lived an hour, but it was only minutes." His words linger. You feel it yourself. Nights stretch long and brutal, while meals vanish in a heartbeat. The bell is the only anchor in this distortion, keeping you tethered to human rhythm instead of the ocean's. You run your fingers across the railing, damp with spray, and close your eyes briefly. The bell tolls once more, and you jump slightly proof of its hold on your nerves. Around you, no man ignores it. Even in the loudest storm, when wind drowns voices, the bell's strike cuts through. It is command, warning, comfort, and doom, all in one. Later in the day, the sun climbs high, beating heat onto your shoulders. Sweat slicks your skin, and thirst rises again. Another bell rings, summoning men to drink, to eat, to shift duty. You realize you've begun to live not by your own body's clock, but by the ship's. Sleep, hunger, labor, even fear each now belongs to the tolling of bronze. As dusk descends, the final watch of the evening begins. Men shuffle wearily into position, their faces hollow with fatigue. The bell strikes, deep and resonant, and a hush falls briefly, as though everyone listens for something more. You feel it too, the recognition that each sound marks not just time but survival. One more half-hour endured, one more chance to live until dawn. You settle against the rail, the sea darkening into shadow. The stars blink awake above, their light ancient, indifferent. Yet down here, the ship obeys the bell, and so do you. Time is no longer yours, it belongs to the vessel, to the voyage, to the relentless rhythm that carves eternity into small, survivable pieces. The bell fades into the wind, and now the true labor begins. The rigging towers above you like a labyrinth of ropes, pulleys, and sails, a forest of canvas straining against the breath of the sea. You tilt your head back, dizzy at the sight of men already climbing, their bodies small against the looming mast. Soon enough, it is your turn. First-hand accounts of seafaring life emphasize the grueling reality of the rigging. Each rope was not merely a line, but a lifeline. Sails had to be raised, lowered, trimmed, reefed, endless adjustments in response to shifting winds. Climbing meant bare feet pressed against slick ratlines, hands burning on rough hemp. One slip could mean a plunge onto the deck, or worse, into the waves where no one would follow. You grasp the rope ladder, palms rough against the coarse fibers. The ship sways, amplifying every movement. With each step, the deck shrinks beneath you, the horizon expanding until you feel suspended between sea and sky. Wind tears at your tunic, salt spray stings your eyes, and your breath quickens not from exertion alone, but from the sheer vertigo of height. An unusual trick surfaces among the climbers. Some chew on leather straps or bits of rope to keep focus, biting down to steady their nerves. Others hum loudly, drowning fear in rhythm. You choose silence, gripping harder, feeling your arms tremble as you reach the first yardarm. Historians continue to disagree about how disciplined crews truly were when working aloft. Some portray them as near acrobats, moving in perfect sync, while others suggest constant accidents, chaos, and improvisation. Watching the men around you, you believe both. Some climb with ease, swinging like dancers. Others fumble, curse, nearly slip. Discipline or not, the rigging always demanded more than it gave. The sail above thrashes violently, snapping like thunder. You crawl out along the yard, canvas whipping, rope cutting into your palms. Every movement requires balance, strength, and blind trust in wood and hemp. A gust nearly flings you sideways and your heart lurches, but you press flat against the spar, clinging with every muscle. Below, the sea churns, endless, merciless. You shout to the man beside you, your voice torn away by the wind. Together you wrestle the sail, hauling, folding, tying. Knots bite into your fingers, nails splinter. Sweat stings your eyes, though the wind whips it dry instantly. The work feels eternal, yet urgent. One mistake could shred the canvas, leave the ship crippled. When at last the sail is reefed, you sag against the spar, lungs heaving. The man beside you grins, teeth flashing white against a face streaked with grime. You manage a weak smile in return. The shared danger binds you more tightly than any knot. Descending is no easier. Your muscles tremble, feet slip, rope scrapes, skin raw. Still, the deck welcomes you back, solid and blessedly close. You collapse against a coil of rope, chest heaving, arms burning. Around you, men do the same, some laughing, some silent, all exhausted. An odd detail you overhear. One sailor claims the ropes carry voices, that if you press your ear against them, you can hear the ship's soul. Another scoffs, yet secretly tries it when he thinks no one watches. You wonder if perhaps both are right, that the creak and hum of rigging really do speak, though only to those desperate enough to listen. As the day wears on, the cycle repeats. The wind shifts. The sails must change. The ropes must be pulled again. There is no finish, only endless adjustment. Your hands blister, your shoulders ache, but the ship demands without pause. By sunset, the rigging glows red in the fading light, a web of shadows and fire. The men aloft look like silhouettes in a painting, suspended between sky and sea. Beauty hides the brutality, but your body remembers every climb, every scrape, every shiver of fear. When the bell tolls once more, signaling the change of watch, you lie back against the deck, arms limp, eyes heavy. The rigging looms above, a dark skeleton against the stars. You know tomorrow it will call you again, and you will climb, and you will endure. Because out here, the ropes are not optional, they are the ship's veins, and your survival depends on them. The sun barely clears the horizon when the order comes. Scrub the decks. The words drop like stones, and every man groans softly, though none dare protest. For all the rigging's dangers, there is a different kind of cruelty in this chore. The slow, grinding labour of making the ship itself gleam, even when it seems the sea would undo the effort by nightfall. Maritime records consistently describe this ritual. Sailors scoured the planks with blocks of soft sandstone holystones, they were called, either because the men knelt while using them, or because the scrubbing itself was a kind of penance. You kneel now, knees pressing into damp wood, and wrap your hands around the gritty stone. The grain bites your skin as you push it forward, back and forth, again and again, until your muscles burn. Some men joke that holystoning cleans nothing, that it merely grinds the deck thinner each day. Others insist it prevents rot, keeping the timbers free of slime and salt. Historians remain divided too. Some argue it preserved the wood, while others claim it weakened the very boards meant to hold the ship together. As you work, sweat dripping, you find it hard to believe this ritual serves any purpose beyond suffering. Yet the officers demand it, and so you scrub. Around you, the deck becomes a chorus of scraping. Men bent low, arms moving in rhythm. Water sloshes from buckets, salt spray mingles with suds, and the air fills with the harsh rasp of stone on wood. The smell is sharp: soap, tar, brine, sweat blending into a single note of labour. One curious detail catches your attention. Some sailors sing softly as they scrub, voices low, almost like prayer. The rhythm of their song matches the scrape, transforming punishment into ritual. A fragment reaches you, an old ballad of a woman waiting at shore. You hum along under your breath, and for a moment the labour feels less endless. The work is monotonous, but danger still lurks. A man slips on the wet planks, his head cracking against wood. He curses, blood seeping, but rises quickly. There is no sympathy here, only a barked order to keep moving. The sea does not pause, and neither do its masters. You pause briefly, flexing your sore fingers, and glance at the officers. They pace above, boots gleaming, hands folded behind backs. They do not kneel, do not scrub, yet they demand spotless boards. The irony burns, but you swallow it. Anger has no place here. It curdles too quickly into punishment. In your mind, you return to land streets where rain washes stone, where no one kneels for hours to polish what will soon be dirty again. The comparison stings. Out here, labour serves less the wood than the order it represents. The ship must gleam, not because it matters, but because discipline depends on it. Buckets empty, stones scrape, backs ache. The day drags on in the rhythm of scouring. You feel skin peel from your palms, raw patches where salt bites into flesh. You wonder how long your hands will last before they harden into permanent callus. And yet, as the sun climbs higher, you notice something strange. The deck does brighten. The planks shine faintly, pale where the stone has scoured them. The ship seems refreshed, alive again, as though the ritual holds some quiet magic after all. Perhaps the truth lies not in whether the wood is preserved, but in whether the men are shaped. Scrubbing binds you, forcing you into one motion, one rhythm, one crew. By late afternoon, the chore is finally called to an end. The stones are stacked, the buckets drained, and the men slump against rails, breath ragged. You flex your fingers, red and blistered, and let the wind dry your sweat. The smell of soap lingers faintly, almost sweet against the salt air. One sailor nearby chuckles, wiping his brow. "We polish her like she's a queen," he mutters, patting the deck, "and still she treats us like dogs." The others laugh. But there is no malice in it, only weary truth. The ship demands, and you obey. As the sun dips, painting the sea in copper and gold, you look down at the planks beneath you. They glow in the light, smooth and clean, a mirror of your own exhaustion. Perhaps tomorrow the salt will cake them again, perhaps the rain will smear them in grime. But tonight, at least, the ship gleams. And in that gleam lies the paradox of life at sea. Endless toil, endless futility, yet also a strange, stubborn pride. You may never own this ship, but your sweat claims it in ways no officer's boots ever could. The planks still glisten from hours of scrubbing when night descends again, bringing with it not rest but another kind of duty, finding the ship's way forward. You glance upward, and the sky seems impossibly wide, a cathedral of stars wheeling above the dark sea. The officers call for charts and instruments, and you linger nearby, curious as the mysterious business of navigation begins. It is well established in maritime history that medieval sailors relied heavily on celestial navigation using the sun, moon, and stars to guide them across open water. But what those methods looked like in practice remains hazy. Some records describe crude astrolabes or early cross-staffs, while others suggest men simply trusted instinct and experience, following the rise and set of familiar constellations. Tonight, you watch as your ship's master squints skyward, instruments clutched in calloused hands, his lips moving in quiet calculation. The sea is still, yet the ship creaks as though impatient. Men stand silent, waiting. You follow the master's gaze to the North Star, burning steady in the sky. He raises his cross-staff, aligning it with the horizon, then scratches a note onto parchment. His movements seem rehearsed, almost ritualistic, though you wonder how precise such gestures can truly be when the deck sways beneath his feet. An odd superstition colours the moment. One sailor spits over the rail, insisting it pleases the spirits of the deep to show respect before charting a course. Another mutters that pointing at stars invites storms, so he keeps his eyes down. These rituals seem absurd, yet no one laughs. In the silence of the night watch, the line between science and magic blurs easily. Among scholars, the debate continues. Some argue medieval navigators mastered the art of reading heavens with astonishing accuracy. Others believe much of it was guesswork, bolstered by dead reckoning and sheer luck. Watching the master now, you cannot decide. His confidence feels real, yet his tools look so frail, his numbers so uncertain. The stars wheel overhead, impossibly bright, and for a moment you feel them pulling at you, points of light stretching across eternity. You wonder how many sailors before you have stared upward in awe and terror, seeing both salvation and confusion in the same constellations. The sea offers no markers, no roads, only this shifting ceiling of fire. The master rolls his parchment, satisfied. Orders ripple across the deck. Adjust the course, trim the sails, keep her steady. You feel the ship respond, the timbers humming beneath your feet as the crew leaps into action. It is remarkable how a few stars, a few scratches on parchment, can steer hundreds of tons of wood across endless water. One sailor nudges you, grinning. Doesn't matter what the stars say, she goes where she wants. He nods at the sea, dark and vast. You half believe him. The ocean feels too alive, too willful, to be tamed by sticks and numbers. The air grows colder, damp with mist. You pull your cloak tighter, eyes still drifting skyward. Somewhere far off, lightning flickers, silent and distant, a reminder that not all signs in the heavens are gentle. You recall tales of comets that terrified sailors, believed to herald disaster. Whether they did or not, you cannot say, but you know fear is as much a compass as any instrument. Hours pass in steady rhythm. The ship cuts through the water, guided by stars invisible to anyone not trained to read them. You marvel at the fragility of it all, the reliance on a clear sky, the trust placed in trembling hands, the faith that tomorrow's dawn will rise where expected. One cloud, one miscalculation, one storm, and the course vanishes like smoke. Still, tonight you feel a strange reverence. The stars blaze with ancient light, indifferent yet faithful. They have guided countless sailors, whispered endless myths, carried dreams across oceans, and now they guide you too, whether by science, superstition, or something in between. You rest your head against the rail, letting the wind cool your skin. The ship creaks, the sails snap, the stars shimmer. Navigation may be uncertain, but the act itself is calming. a reminder that direction exists even in the vast unknown. When at last the bell tolls again, signaling the end of the watch, you descend below deck, stars still burning in your mind's eye. You realize that for all the hardship, the hunger, the damp, the vermin, this sight is something precious. To lie beneath an ocean of stars, to steer by their eternal fire, is to glimpse a beauty that belongs only to those who dare the sea. The sky still glitters with constellations when the murmur of voices rises around you. The ship has quieted from its adjustments, yet conversation stirs in the shadows. You lean closer, catching fragments of words that turn your skin prickly. They are speaking not of sails or ropes, but of omens. On land, superstition may amuse you. Out here, on a wooden shell afloat in black infinity, it feels dangerously real. Accounts from travelers and chroniclers make clear that medieval sailors wrapped their lives in ritual and belief. The sea was too vast, too uncontrollable, for logic alone. So they turned to signs, birds, winds, dreams, even casual gestures to explain fortune and disaster. Tonight, you become part of that world. One sailor spits neatly into the waves, murmuring thanks to the spirits of the deep. Another glares at him, whispering that spitting off the port side tempts storms. You laugh quietly at the contradiction, but no one else smiles. To them, both warnings can be true at once. A peculiar detail emerges as an older mariner warns against whistling on deck. He claims the sound mimics the wind, calling tempests to tear the sails. Another man adds that killing an albatross brings certain doom, though feeding one brings luck. You think of the gulls shrieking overhead days ago, and suddenly their presence feels less ordinary. Different historians interpret these beliefs in varying ways. Some see them as psychological tools, rituals that gave men a sense of control when they had none. Others argue they reflected older, deeper traditions, remnants of pagan practices blending with Christian prayer. Perhaps both are right. You sense in the men's eyes that faith and fear intertwine seamlessly here. A hush falls as a shooting star cuts the sky, blazing briefly before vanishing. Gasps echo, followed by muttered interpretations. Some call it a blessing, others a warning. You realize the heavens are not just guides for navigation but canvases for prophecy. Every flicker carries weight, every change a message. The deck grows tense as one man begins humming a tune sharp, shrill, almost like whistling. Immediately, curses fly. "Stop it!" a voice growls, and the hum dies. You see real fear in their eyes, not mere annoyance. For them, storms are not accidents, but punishments, summoned by careless acts. You remember tales of painted eyes on ship prows, carved to watch over the vessel. This ship has none, but men speak of them as though alive, guardians against unseen forces. Someone traces a small cross into the wood near his hammock. Another nails a shell onto a beam. The ship itself becomes shrine, temple, charm. Your gaze drifts upward again. Clouds drift slowly across the stars, dimming them. The murmurs grow louder, men debating whether the change signals calm or calamity. One swears it means fair weather. Another insists storms. Both argue with conviction, neither offering proof. And you find yourself caught, half believing both. A sailor leans close, telling you quietly of a voyage where the cook mocked Neptune, tossing bones into the sea as an insult. Within days, the ship struck rocks, shattered, and only a handful survived. Whether truth or embellishment, the story grips you. He finishes with a whisper, "Respect the sea." She hears everything. As the night deepens, the ship rolls gently, no storm in sight. Still, the tension lingers, woven into every glance, every breath. You realize superstition is not decoration here, it is survival. A way to explain the inexplicable, to make the unbearable feel governed by rules, however strange. You close your eyes briefly, listening. The creak of timbers, the flap of sails, the low murmur of prayers and charms, it all blends into one soundscape. You feel the weight of belief pressing as surely as the waves. You may not share it, but you cannot escape it. Out here, under endless sky, superstition becomes as real as the ropes in your hands. When dawn finally lightens the horizon, the omens fade with the stars. Men relax, laugh again, shake off their whispers. But you know tonight, when darkness returns, so too will the rituals. On land, the sea is only water. At sea, it is alive and it listens. The next day dawns bright, the wind steady, and though your body aches from scrubbing and climbing, the air carries something lighter. A call rings out across the deck, not for rations or rigging, but for rhythm. Sailors gather, ropes coiled in their fists, and a chant begins. At first it seems rough, uneven, like drunken shouting, but as the voices merge, you realize it's deliberate. The ship itself moves to music. Maritime songs, often called sea shanties in later centuries, were already part of life aboard medieval vessels. Their rhythms matched the labor at hand, hauling ropes, raising anchors, turning the heavy capstan. Work was relentless, and voices provided both cadence and courage. You hear it now, a raw chorus, half singing, half shouting, each syllable yanking the ropes in unison. The sound is as much tool as tune. You grip a line and join in, your voice awkward at first. The words are nonsense to you, half prayer, half joke, but they carry you along. Heave away, haul away. Your throat strains, your arms burn, but the rhythm dulls the pain. Each pull matches a note, each note drives another pull. The ship seems to breathe with you, its sails filling, its body lurching forward with every chorus. An unusual practice emerges during these sessions. Some men invent verses on the spot, weaving in insults, bawdy jokes, or memories of home. Others respond with laughter or jeers, and the song grows, stretching like rope itself. A verse about a sweetheart in port, a jest about the cook's stew, a threat against rats all fold into melody. It is chaos turned into harmony, work turned into play. Historians still dispute how much of this music was formal tradition and how much was improvisation. Some argue structured chants existed long before the age of sail, while others believe medieval crews sang only loosely, shaping rhythm from instinct. Watching the men now, you suspect both are true. The words matter little, the beat is everything. As the sun climbs, the chant at the capstan begins. Here, the work is brutal. Men march in circles, pushing bars to raise the heavy anchor or tighten thick ropes. The song shifts to a slower, heavier rhythm, each beat a step, each step a strain. You press your shoulder against the bar, moving with the others, your body falling into cadence. Sweat drips, muscles scream, but the song carries you forward like a tide. A peculiar belief surfaces. One man insists the louder the crew sings, the faster the work goes. Another swears silence is safer, that singing angers the sea. The debate continues even as voices rise, proving perhaps that belief bends under necessity. For now, the chant wins. Your ears ring with the sound. Your chest vibrates with it. The ocean crashes, gulls cry overhead, yet the music dominates all. You feel almost drunk on the rhythm, as if labor itself becomes secondary to the sheer force of voices joined together. When at last the rope is hauled and the task complete, the song ends abruptly. Silence feels strange, jarring, as if the ship itself has exhaled. Men collapse onto coils of rope, laughing, panting, spitting sweat from their lips. One hums a leftover verse, another claps his shoulder, and the bond between them seems stronger than food or drink could ever make. You realize the songs are more than labor tools, they are anchors of sanity. In the endless monotony of sea life, with hunger gnawing and fear looming, rhythm becomes medicine. A simple chorus can turn misery into endurance, loneliness into belonging. Later, as dusk gathers, another chant rises, this one softer, sung not for work but for comfort. A handful of sailors gather near the bow, their voices weaving a ballad of lost homes and waiting lovers. The tune is mournful, almost prayer-like. You lean against the rail, listening, the melody mingling with waves. For the first time in days you feel something like calm. Scholars note that such songs are difficult to trace. Few were written down, most vanished with the voices that sang them. Yet you sense their power here, alive in the air, carved into memory more deeply than any chart. Music does what rations and rules cannot. It humanizes the sea. When night falls, the last verse fades, leaving only the creak of timbers and the sigh of waves. You find yourself humming still, a fragment clinging to your lips. Perhaps tomorrow the chant will return, or perhaps new words will be born. Out here, music is as endless as the ocean, as necessary as breath. And as you curl into your hammock, body weary but spirit strangely lifted, you understand. The sea may own your labor, but in song, if only for moments, you reclaim your soul. The memory of the work songs lingers in your ears as the next day drifts into long, dull hours. For once, the sails are trimmed, the sea calm, the tasks light. There is a strange emptiness in such moments, no ropes to haul, no storms to fight, only the vast monotony of water stretching in every direction. You sense restlessness settle over the crew like a fog. Surviving journals and travelogues remind us that sailors were not machines. Between duties, there were stretches of idleness, hours, sometimes days, where men had little to do but wait for the sea's next command. And so, the ship became a crucible of small diversions, games, and quiet crafts that held madness at bay. You see it begin with a knife. One sailor carves slowly into a scrap of wood, his brow furrowed, his lips pursed. From rough shavings emerges the outline of a bird, wings outstretched. He works patiently, as though shaping the memory of freedom itself. Another man approaches, tossing dice in his hand, grinning with invitation. Soon a circle forms, and the rattle of bone cubes echoes across the deck. Bets are placed bread crusts, extra gulps of ale, even a button from a tunic. The stakes are laughable on land, but here they feel monumental. A peculiar pastime catches your eye. One man knots rope into intricate patterns, fashioning what looks like miniature nets. He claims it brings luck to practice when the seas are calm. Another hums while patching his shirt, needle moving clumsily through fabric. These tiny acts, unremarkable on shore, seem sacred here. Small ways to stitch humanity into an otherwise merciless routine. There is disagreement among historians about how officers viewed such leisure. Some sources suggest they encouraged games to maintain morale. Others hint they forbade gambling, fearing it sparked quarrels. Looking at the dice circle now, you suspect both were true, permitted in quiet moments, punished if tempers flared. The laughter grows louder. A sailor slaps the deck, victorious, while another groans, accusing him of cheating. For a moment, tension flickers anger, sharp in tired eyes. But then someone cracks a joke, and laughter returns, fragile yet genuine. You realize how thin the line is between camaraderie and conflict. Leisure is not merely escape. It is dangerous too, when boredom sharpens nerves like knives. Stories circulate, as they always do. One man brags of a tavern girl back home, another of treasure glimpsed in a foreign port. You can tell half of it is invention, but no one minds. Out here, tales are currency, traded as eagerly as dice rolls. Perhaps the lies matter more than the truth, for they paint color onto a world otherwise bleached by sun and salt. A curious superstition surfaces again. One sailor carves a small figure, muttering it will guard him against drowning. He tucks it into his pocket, eyes secretive, though everyone pretends not to notice. These tokens, whether carved or imagined, carry weight heavier than steel. As the afternoon drifts on, you notice the sea itself seems to lull the men into reverie. Some nap openly, sprawled against barrels, mouths agape. Others gaze at the horizon, silent, thoughts clearly far from the ship. You find yourself doing the same, the monotony sinking into your bones. For the first time, you feel how endless this voyage truly island. Researchers still argue whether sailors truly valued these idle moments, or whether they bred more despair than relief. Some accounts speak of joy in games and carving, others of men falling into melancholy, haunted by homesickness. You feel the tension yourself, laughter one moment, a hollow ache the next. The line between escape and reminder of absence blurs constantly. As dusk approaches, the games scatter, the dice vanish, the carvings are pocketed, the songs fade. The crew returns to routine, their brief taste of leisure tucked away like contraband. You sense no one truly rests. Idleness is not peace, but merely the pause before labor resumes. You lean against the rail, watching the sun dissolve into the sea. The horizon swallows it greedily, painting water and sky in shades of fire and ash. For a breath, the world feels beautiful again. You clutch the memory, knowing soon darkness will return, and with it the grind of watch, storm, and hunger. Still, you are grateful for these hours. Without them, perhaps the sea would claim not only bodies but minds. In carving, in dice, in song, the sailors preserve something fragile, the memory of being human, and in that fragile memory lies the strength to endure another day. The calm of leisure never lasts long. Discipline rules this ship as surely as wind fills the sails, and when men stray too far from obedience, punishment follows swiftly. You sense it before you see it. A silence falls, whispers hush, and every gaze turns toward the mainmast. There, an unlucky sailor stands with wrists bound, face pale in the lantern light. Contemporary accounts reveal that life at sea was governed by strict codes. The captain's word was law, and even small infractions, stealing food, sleeping on watch, speaking back to an officer, could earn brutal correction. Sailors endured these punishments not because they agreed with them, but because hierarchy was the only thing holding chaos at bay in the middle of a vast, lawless ocean. The man's crime tonight is simple. He was caught pocketing extra biscuit from the rations. You understand his hunger, but the crew cannot afford exceptions. To steal from the barrel is to steal from every stomach aboard. The officers murmur, and the sentence is clear. The whip is fetched. It hangs heavy in the boatswain's hands, leather thongs tipped with knots. Some men look away, others stare grimly. You swallow hard, remembering tales of lashes tearing skin to ribbons, leaving scars like rivers across backs. A curious practice emerges before the punishment begins. The prisoner is offered a chance to beg forgiveness from the crew. He does, voice hoarse, insisting desperation drove him. A few men nod, sympathy in their eyes, but none intervene. Mercy at sea is rare, and discipline must be seen. Scholars remain divided about how often such punishments occurred. Some records suggest captains wielded the lash frequently, keeping order through fear. Others hint it was used sparingly, reserved for serious crimes. Tonight, as the boatswain raises his arm, you realize statistics matter little to the man about to bleed. The first strike cracks across the prisoner's back, sharp as thunder. He gasps, body arching, then collapses against the mast. Blood seeps quickly through his shirt. Another lash follows, and another, each one echoing across the deck. Some sailors flinch, others remain expressionless, their faces masks carved from fatigue. You grip the railing, nails digging into wood, forcing yourself to watch. There is ritual in this cruelty. The count is called aloud 1, 2, 3, until the sentence is complete. The man groans, nearly faints, but he does not scream. Pride holds his tongue, even as pain breaks his body. When the final lash falls, silence hovers, broken only by the rasp of waves. The prisoner is unbound, collapsing to his knees. Two shipmates haul him away, muttering encouragement. The boatswain coils the whip neatly, expression blank, as though he has merely finished routine labor. You shudder at the indifference, the normalization of pain. An odd superstition attaches to this ritual. Some sailors believe blood spilled on deck appeases the sea, strengthening the ship. Others whisper it invites misfortune. You wonder how men reconcile such contradictions, but then you realize they do not need to fear itself is explanation enough. As the deck clears, the atmosphere shifts. Conversation resumes quietly, but tension lingers. You feel it in your bones, the reminder that freedom does not exist here. Every choice is bound by rope, by rank, by threat of the lash. And yet discipline has its logic. Without it, perhaps the crew would crumble, hunger driving theft, exhaustion breeding mutiny. The lash, brutal as it is, becomes part of survival. You hate it, but you see its purpose. The wounded man returns later, shirt torn, back raw. He lies face down in his hammock, a groan escaping with every breath. One sailor slips him a scrap of cloth soaked in vinegar. Another mutters a prayer. Compassion exists here too, in quiet gestures away from the officer's gaze. Historians argue whether such punishments broke men's spirits or hardened their resolve. Watching the crew tonight, you suspect both. Some faces carry fear, others a grim pride in endurance. For yourself, you carry only unease, the realization that the sea demands obedience not just from muscles, but from the will itself. You climb into your hammock, the image of the lash still vivid. Sleep comes slowly, haunted by the sound of leather striking flesh. Even as dreams take you, the lesson remains. On this ship, survival is chained to discipline, and mercy drifts far behind, left on the shores you may never see again. The next morning dawns grey, the sky bruised with low clouds. After the punishment of the night before, the ship feels subdued, as though every man carries the sting of the lash across his own back. Yet even here, in this floating prison of discipline and salt, there are places sailors turn for solace, and for many, that place is prayer. It is well documented that medieval sailors mixed formal religion with older, stranger beliefs. Christianity dominated Europe's coasts, and crews carried crucifixes, psalters, or relics into their voyages. But alongside those sacred symbols thrived pagan whispers, invocations to Neptune, offerings tossed into the sea, chants muttered in languages older than the church itself. You sense that tension today, as the men gather at the bow for their morning rituals. One sailor kneels with a rosary, beads clacking softly as he murmurs Latin prayers. His lips move steadily, his face lifted toward a sky that offers little warmth. Beside him, another man squats low, tossing crumbs of biscuit into the water. "For the deep," he mutters, voice hoarse. No priest would bless such an offering, but the men around him nod gravely. Out here, nothing is wasted except when it is meant to buy survival. A peculiar detail catches your attention. A small wooden cross nailed discreetly to the mast, worn smooth by salt and touch. Sailors brush their fingers across it as they pass. Some reverent, others almost casual, but the gesture is constant. The mast has become more than timber. It is altar and witness. There is disagreement among scholars about how sincerely these prayers were observed. Some argue that piety at sea was superficial, gestures performed out of habit rather than conviction. Others claim sailors were deeply devout, their faith sharpened by constant peril. Watching the men now, you sense truth in both views. For some, the cross is hope. For others, Neptune feels nearer. You lean against the railing as the rituals continue. The sea itself becomes congregation, its surface reflecting the dull sky, its voice rising in endless surf. A sailor nearby whispers that the ocean has moods, and prayer is the only way to keep her calm. He taps his forehead quickly, then spits into the waves, as if hedging his bets between church and superstition. Later in the day, the captain orders a psalm read aloud. His voice, though stern, carries weight, and the men listen in silence. The words echo strangely, both solemn and fragile, over the endless water. For a moment, the ship feels less like a place of hunger and punishment, more like a small, swaying chapel. But faith here is never one shape. That evening, when stars prick the sky, you hear another ritual unfold. A group of sailors huddle near the stern, whispering chants you don't recognize. Their words rise and fall with the waves, more incantation than prayer. You glimpse a scrap of bone, perhaps from a bird, passed hand to hand like a relic. They speak Neptune's name with reverence, as though the god himself watches from below. Conflicting accounts from travelers reflect this dual devotion. Some captains forbade pagan rituals outright, enforcing Christian prayers with threats of punishment. Others tolerated them, perhaps fearing that suppressing belief would breed unrest. Out here, it is difficult to separate necessity from faith. Every prayer, whether to Christ, to Neptune, or to nameless spirits, springs from the same soil of fear. You find yourself whispering too, though you hardly know to whom. The words form half from memory, half from instinct. Perhaps you pray to God, perhaps to the sea, perhaps to the silence between them. All you know is that the act itself eases something in your chest. The ship rocks gently, lanterns swaying. The men disperse, some crossing themselves, others muttering charms. You realize belief is as essential here as rope or sail. It binds the crew, gives shape to dread, transforms fear into ritual. Without it, perhaps men would simply collapse under the weight of uncertainty. As you crawl into your hammock, the wooden cross catches your eye again, dim in the lantern's glow. You touch it briefly, rough grain beneath your fingertips, and feel the ship breathe around you. Prayer may not calm storms or banish hunger, but it steadies hearts. And in this endless expanse of water and sky, a steady heart is sometimes the only thing keeping you afloat. Morning breaks pale and weak, and with it comes the sight of a sailor hunched in his hammock, face slick with sweat. His skin looks waxy, his lips cracked, and when he coughs, the sound rattles like pebbles in a jar. The others glance his way but say nothing. Illness at sea is as common as rope burns, and nearly as feared. You edge closer, curiosity and dread tugging in equal measure. It is clear from records of medieval voyages that health on board was fragile. With cramped quarters, stale food, and damp air, disease spread swiftly. Remedies were crude if they existed at all. You see it firsthand now, as the ship's appointed surgeon, little more than a cook with extra bottles, arrives carrying a pouch of herbs. He kneels beside the sick man, muttering reassurances neither you nor the patient believes. The treatment begins with a bitter brew, ladled from a pot that smells of boiled roots and vinegar. The sick sailor grimaces, gagging but swallows. "It'll draw out the fever," the surgeon insists, though his tone wavers. You remember hearing that bleeding was another common cure, leeches or knives used to drain bad humours. A chill runs through you as you glance at the small blade tucked in the surgeon's belt. One odd remedy emerges. A clove of garlic pressed against the patient's wrist, bound with rag. "Keeps the rot away," the surgeon mutters. Another sailor spits into the sea, murmuring that illness comes from spirits angered by careless men. The mixture of medicine and magic feels seamless here, as though both belong equally to the realm of healing. Researchers still dispute how effective these treatments were. Some argue the herbs and broths offered real relief. Others suggest they only soothed symptoms briefly. Accounts of bleeding are even more controversial. Some claim it saved lives, others that it hastened death. Watching the sweat drip from the man's brow, you sense the debate was as desperate then as it is unresolved now. The sick sailor groans, clutching his stomach. His hammock sways gently, the canvas stained dark with sweat. Rats skitter close, sniffing, and a sailor kicks at them, muttering curses. The air grows thick with unease. You realize illness is not just a threat to one man, but to the whole crew. A single fever can spread like fire in these cramped quarters, igniting panic faster than lightning strikes a mast. A peculiar ritual follows. Men avoid touching the patient, yet leave scraps of biscuit near his hammock, as though feeding him from a distance keeps them safe. You see pity in their eyes, but also fear. No one wants to be next. Later, the surgeon attempts another cure. He mixes wine with powdered charcoal, forcing it between the man's lips. Draws poison from the gut. he explains, though his hands shake. The patient swallows weakly, then collapses into restless sleep. The surgeon sighs, wiping his brow, and mutters, "It's up to God now." You climb back on deck, the air fresher, though unease lingers. Stories circulate among the men. One recalls a voyage where half the crew died of flux within weeks. Another swears sailors once cured fever by sleeping with a slice of onion tied to their belt. You wonder which is worse, the disease itself or the endless guessing at how to treat it. Scholarly debates persist about whether medieval crews understood scurvy, the disease of missing citrus. Some say they recognized it, calling it land sickness, though they lacked a cure. Others insist they mistook it for other fevers. Either way, you glance at the barrels of biscuit and salted pork and feel a pang of dread. How many days before your gums swell too? By nightfall, the sick sailor stirs again. His cough is weaker, but his eyes shine with fever. A shipmate sits near, humming softly, as though song itself might heal. You realize care here is not only herbs or knives, it is presence, however fragile. In the middle of the ocean, comfort is scarce, yet even a hand on the shoulder carries weight. You return to your hammock, the air heavy with whispers. Illness hangs like a shadow, unseen yet inescapable. You scratch at your arm, wondering if the itch is flea bite or omen. The truth is simple and terrible. On this ship, sickness is as constant as salt, and cure as uncertain as the sea itself. The fevered man's groans still echo in your ears the following day, but soon another kind of whisper threads across the deck, quieter, more dangerous. A pair of sailors crouch near the bow, heads close together, voices lowered. You catch only fragments. Woman, bad luck, hidden. The words tug at your attention, for they break the monotony with something tantalizing gossip. It is a recurring theme in seafaring lore that women were thought to bring misfortune aboard. Chroniclers note the superstition clearly. A female presence might anger the sea, distract the men, or invite storms. Yet, paradoxically, scattered accounts tell of stowaways and disguised companions who travelled nonetheless. Today, you hear those legends retold in hushed tones, as though they were unfolding around you. One sailor insists he once sailed with a woman hidden among the crew, disguised in coarse trousers and cap. No one knew until she was found out when a storm nearly tore us apart, he swears. Another counters with a grin. That storm would have come either way, but the officers needed someone to blame. The others laugh nervously, though no one dismisses the story entirely. A peculiar detail surfaces when a man pulls from his pouch a tiny token, a carved figurine of a woman, no bigger than his thumb. "Keeps me company," he says with a sly smile. Others frown, muttering that such charms invite ruin. You realize even a symbol of the forbidden presence holds power here, half comfort, half curse. Scholars remain divided on the reality of women aboard medieval ships. Some argue it was nearly unheard of, restricted to rare voyages with passengers of high rank. Others believe clandestine cases occurred more often, hidden beneath layers of silence. The evidence is scant, and perhaps purposefully erased. Watching the men argue, you understand why. Belief was as strong as fact, and sometimes stronger. The conversation shifts into myth. A sailor recalls tales of sirens, women of the sea whose voices lured ships to wreck. Another speaks of sea witches, said to curse voyages from afar. The stories weave together, blurring truth and imagination. But the fear in the men's voices is real. Out here, where water stretches infinite and unknown, any hint of female presence becomes both danger and desire. You lean against the rail, considering. The absence of women is felt in every groan, every sigh, every song twisted with longing. Perhaps superstition is not just fear of storms, but fear of distraction, of memory too painful to bear. To keep women away is to keep hearts harder, less vulnerable. Yet sailors carry their ghosts nonetheless. Tokens, carvings, whispers of voices in dreams. Later, as the sun dips low, the rumors grow bolder. Some swear a stowaway hides in the hold of this very ship, emerging only at night. The idea spreads like fire eyes dart toward shadows, ears strain for secret footsteps. You know it is fantasy, but part of you listens too closely. Imagination thrives in the cramped quarters, fed by hunger and distance. One odd ritual follows. A sailor spits over his left shoulder when women are mentioned, claiming it wards off their supposed curse. Another draws a small cross in the air, invoking protection. These gestures, small and constant, reveal just how deeply superstition seeps into bone. Night falls, and the gossip dwindles into uneasy silence. You crawl into your hammock, listening to the sigh of the sea against the hull. For a moment, you imagine the stories are true, that somewhere below, in the dark hold, a hidden figure waits. The thought unsettles you, yet also sparks something warmer, a reminder of life beyond salt and rope. In truth, whether women sailed or not may never be settled. What matters is the way their absence, or rumoured presence, shaped every man aboard. For some, it was terror. For others, it was hope. For you, tonight, it is both an echo of home and a shadow of storm, drifting together in the endless sea. The next port lies still far beyond the horizon, yet already talk of land creeps into every conversation. Men lean against barrels, eyes half dreaming, and speak of markets filled with scents and colours the sea can never provide. You listen, drawn in despite yourself. The world ashore feels almost mythical now, a place of spice and wonder. Chroniclers of medieval voyages often wrote about these encounters with foreign shores. Ships returned not just with goods, but with stories that dazzled and unsettled those at home. Sailors described markets overflowing with cinnamon, pepper, saffron flavors so powerful they seemed to border on magic. To men starved of anything fresh, the thought of spice was more than luxury. It was salvation. A shipmate beside you tells of a harbour where fruit piled high in baskets, mangoes, pomegranates, figs glowed like treasure. One bite, he says, eyes distant, and you forget every biscuit, every rat. The others groan, half envious, half entranced. You swallow, imagining juice dripping down your chin, sweetness impossible after weeks of salted meat. One curious detail spreads through the group: tales of markets where sellers trained parrots to mimic customers, their squawks calling prices in sing-song voices. Another man swears he saw monkeys bartering with sailors for scraps of bread, trading them for bright trinkets. Whether truth or embellishment, no one questions it. Out here, any glimpse of the exotic carries weight. There is tension in the stories too. Some sailors boast of kindness from foreign hosts, gifts of bread, water, laughter in shared songs. Others mutter warnings of treachery, recalling markets where prices turned to extortion or food carried hidden illness. Historians still argue whether medieval sailors exaggerated these encounters, painting them wondrous or monstrous depending on audience. The reality, as always, lies tangled between curiosity and fear. You picture yourself stepping onto such a shore, feet sinking into sand instead of planks, air perfumed with spices instead of mildew. The thought fills you with yearning so sharp it hurts. Around you, men sigh as though they share the same dream. For a moment, the ship itself seems suspended, its hunger for land as deep as yours. But dreams twist into caution. An older sailor leans close, voice rough. Beware gifts too easily given. Not all feasts are friendly. He tells of sailors who ate exotic fruits only to sicken, their stomachs twisting in agony. Others nod solemnly, recalling warnings of poisoned wells, of markets that masked traps. The lesson is clear: wonder and danger share the same face. Still, the hunger remains. You find yourself tracing shapes in the air, imaginary baskets of figs, rolls of silk, clay jars of oil. Even the memory of stew cannot erase the ache for something new. The crew clings to these visions, the promise of land keeping them tethered to endurance. At night, as lanterns flicker, the tales grow taller. Men boast of cities where towers touched clouds, of palaces gilded in gold, of rulers who dined on jewels. You know exaggeration when you hear it, yet you do not mind. Fantasies feed the spirit as surely as biscuit feeds the body. An odd ritual closes the evening. One sailor tosses a coin into the sea, muttering that it will buy safe passage to the next port. Another scoffs, claiming the sea accepts no bargains. But still he watches the coin vanish into waves. Belief, like hunger, demands action. You crawl into your hammock later, stomach growling, mind awash with images of markets bright with spices. You realize the sea is not only hunger for food, but hunger for difference, for color, scent, taste, novelty. The voyage is long, but the thought of land, however distant, keeps you alive. And as sleep pulls you under, you dream not of waves, but of stalls bursting with figs, of hands offering strange fruits, of a mouthful of sweetness erasing salt forever. The stories of ports and markets still shimmer in your mind when the next ordeal arrives, not from hunger or storm, but from water itself, or rather, the lack of it. The barrels grow lighter each day, and murmurs ripple across the deck as men ladle only a fraction of what they crave. Thirst becomes the new master, harsher even than hunger. Historical records make it plain. Fresh water was the lifeblood of every voyage, and yet barrels soured quickly. Stagnation bred slime, insects, even worms. A sailor might raise his cup only to find the liquid greenish, rank with stench. Tonight, you take your share and gag the water tastes of rot and wood, but you swallow regardless. To refuse is to wither. A peculiar custom surfaces among the crew. Some men strain their water through scraps of cloth, believing it removes the corruption. Others stir in vinegar, hoping the sourness masks the taste. A few whisper that drinking straight from the barrel is luckier, though luck tastes no sweeter. You watch all three methods, none offering more than illusion. There is still debate among scholars about whether medieval sailors fully understood the dangers of bad water. Some argue they recognized it clearly, even rationed carefully to avoid it turning foul. Others insist mismanagement doomed many voyages, the crew left half mad with thirst. Watching the men now, their lips cracked, their tempers short, you suspect both were true awareness, never guaranteed relief. Rumors spread quickly. One man swears he saw a rat drown in a barrel, its body scooped out only after days of drinking. Another claims officers hoard cleaner casks for themselves, leaving the crew with filth. Anger simmers in these whispers, thirst sharpening resentment like a blade. An odd tidbit catches your ear. Sailors sometimes mixed beer or weak wine with water, believing it kept rot at bay. You recall the faint taste of ale in your ration earlier and wonder if it was kindness or necessity. Alcohol dulled the stench, but it dulled wits too, and drunkenness at sea carried dangers of its own. As the sun climbs, the thirst worsens. Lips split, tongues swell, tempers flare. A scuffle breaks out over a spilled cup, fists flying until officers intervene. Punishment is threatened, but no lash falls, perhaps even discipline bows before thirst. You realize how fragile order becomes when barrels run dry. At dusk, a curious ritual unfolds. A sailor pours the last drops of his ration into the sea, whispering that the ocean must be appeased before rain will fall. The gesture seems mad, wasteful, yet no one stops him. Desperation makes even sacrifice logical. Scholarly debate continues over whether sailors ever drank seawater in despair. Some argue yes, citing accounts of madness and death from salt poisoning. Others claim sailors knew better, no matter their thirst. Tonight, you see men stare longingly at the waves, their eyes feverish, and you cannot be certain. Hunger twists the mind, but thirst unravels it completely. The sky offers no relief. Clouds drift lazily, withholding rain. The air tastes dry, your throat raw, every swallow scraping. You dream of rivers, wells, pitchers brimming with cool water. The dreams feel cruel, taunting, yet you cling to them all the same. By nightfall, the crew lies restless. Coughs rasp, lips bleed, prayers murmur. You sip the last of your ration, gag at its foulness, but feel it soothe your throat briefly. Gratitude and disgust mingle on your tongue. And then, sometime after midnight, a miracle, or what feels like one. Rain begins to fall. At first a drizzle, then a steady pour, hammering canvas and wood. Men scramble with buckets, barrels, even bare hands, laughing like children as they gather the fresh drops. You tilt your face skyward, mouth open, swallowing greedily. The taste is pure, clean, heavenly. It feels like life itself returning. The storm passes quickly, but the barrels are fuller, the men calmer. For now, thirst retreats, yet you know it will return, as surely as hunger, as surely as storm. Water at sea is never endless, never guaranteed. It is ration, ritual, and miracle all at once. You crawl into your hammock, lips damp with rain, and sigh. For tonight at least the ocean has given back what it took. Tomorrow, who knows? But tonight you sleep with the taste of fresh water lingering, sweeter than any wine. The rain barrels glisten full for now, yet fresh water alone cannot soothe the mind. Days bleed into one another, the horizon unchanged, the routines endless. In this sameness, strange things stir inside men's heads. You notice it in their eyes first, a dull glaze, as though they are staring beyond the sea into some other place entirely. Surviving ship logs and scattered letters hint at this phenomenon, what we might call cabin fever, though no cabin is required. The endless sea, the confinement of planks and ropes, the constant press of other bodies all gnaw at sanity. Sailors spoke of visions, of whispers, of moods that darkened like approaching storms. Today you feel the truth of those words humming in the air. One man paces the deck in circles, muttering about land he claims to see. You follow his gaze, but the horizon is blank. Another refuses to leave his hammock, swearing the ship is cursed, that rising will doom him. The officers bark orders, but their voices only skim the surface of deeper unease. A peculiar tidbit surfaces in whispers. Men sometimes swore they saw ghost ships, pale vessels sliding silently across the waves, vanishing when approached. Others claim to hear bells tolling under the sea, or voices calling their names from the deep. You laugh nervously at the tales, but when the wind dies and silence thickens, you half expect to hear them yourself. Historians debate whether such visions were true hallucinations or exaggerated sailors' tales. Some point to dehydration, poor diet, and exhaustion as sparks for delusion. Others argue the stories were crafted later, to dramatize voyages for listeners ashore. Standing on the deck tonight, you feel that the line between imagination and reality bends easily when sky and sea stretch forever. The monotony breeds quarrels too. Small annoyances, sharpened snoring, hoarding crumbs, stepping on another's boots. Tempers flare, fists fly, and the officers separate men with threats of the lash. You realize fights are not about food or insult, but about release, the body rebelling against confinement it cannot escape. An odd ritual develops. To break the monotony, sailors invent mock trials. They crown a king from among them, seat him on an overturned barrel, and bring forward criminals accused of absurd charges, stealing shadows, insulting the sea, singing off-key. Laughter erupts as punishments are handed out, push-ups, a dousing of water, a silly dance. For a time, the tension lifts. Even mock authority feels like freedom compared to the real chain of command. Yet beneath the laughter, unease lingers. You overhear one man whispering of mutiny, his voice sharp with bitterness. Another hushes him quickly, eyes darting, but the word hangs heavy in the air. Mutiny, both dream and nightmare. Historians still argue how often it truly happened. Some claim rare eruptions of desperation, others see it as a constant threat. Tonight, you sense its possibility simmering beneath every jest and quarrel. As days drag on, even the sea seems to toy with minds. Waves slap in endless rhythm, hypnotic. Stars wheel predictably, yet feel uncanny in their sameness. You catch yourself whispering to the water, asking questions it cannot answer. The realization unsettles you. You, too, are changing under this endless monotony. Night brings little relief. Hammocks sway, rats rustle, men mumble in their sleep. Dreams twist into nightmares, storms, monsters, homecomings that dissolve into water. You wake sweaty, disoriented, heart hammering. Around you, others twitch, shout, or weep softly. Madness is not always loud. Sometimes it drips slowly, like water wearing stone. Still, resilience blooms in strange places. A sailor begins carving not birds or charms, but an entire miniature ship from spare wood, complete with tiny sails. He polishes it carefully, eyes alight with focus. Another recites psalms every evening, steady as the tide. A third hums lullabies meant for his children. These small anchors keep minds tethered, preventing drift into darker seas. And you, what anchors you? Perhaps it is observation itself, the act of seeing, of recording silently in your memory. You tell yourself that by noticing the madness, you ward it off. But some nights, when the shadows creep and the sea whispers, you wonder if you're only delaying the inevitable. By dawn, the ship creaks on, crew restless but intact. No mutiny rises, no ghost ship appears, yet the memory of whispers lingers, fragile as thread. You realize the greatest enemy here may not be hunger or storm, but monotony itself, the slow erosion of the mind by endless sameness. You climb the ladder, inhale the salt air, and fix your eyes on the horizon. It is empty, as always. Still, you stare, clinging to the hope that one day, something, anything will break the monotony and remind you that the world beyond this wooden cage still exists. The monotony gnaws at your thoughts when, suddenly, a cry shatters the stillness. "Ship! Off the starboard bow!" Men scramble, eyes narrowing against the glare of the horizon. At first you see only haze, then yes, shapes emerge. Another vessel, sails billowing, hull cutting fast across the waves. Excitement stirs, mingled with unease. Encounters at sea are never simple. Maritime chronicles remind us that meetings between ships could mean salvation or doom. Allies might trade goods, share news, even offer aid. Strangers might bring theft, deceit, or violence. Tonight, as the silhouette grows clearer, you feel every possibility press against your ribs. The crew gathers, whispering. Some hope for barter fresh fruit, tobacco, perhaps a cask of wine. Others mutter of pirates, eyes darting nervously. The officers bark for calm, yet tension crackles in the air like static before lightning. A curious custom reveals itself. One sailor digs out a bright scrap of cloth, tying it to the rigging. "Show we're friendly," he mutters. Another frowns, warning that too much color might invite greed. You watch the debate play out, realizing how fragile signals can be when only fabric and distance carry meaning. Historians still disagree about how structured these signals truly were in the medieval era. Some insist flags and gestures followed set codes. Others argue they were improvisations, different for every crew. As you watch the strangers hoist their own banner dark against the pale sky, you wonder which version of truth you are seeing. The ships draw closer, wind filling sails, timbers groaning. Faces appear on the other deck. Sun, browned, bearded, unreadable. Shouts rise, though distance twists the words into nonsense. A longboat is lowered, oars dipping into water, carrying figures toward you. Hearts pound across your deck, hands grip knives and belaying pins. The visitors clamber aboard, lean men, armed lightly, eyes sharp. Their leader grins, showing too many teeth. Greetings are exchanged, halting, mixed with gestures. At first, tension eases. Talk turns to trade. They offer dried fish, a coil of rope, even a pouch of strange-smelling herbs. In return, they ask for biscuit, for nails, for a flask of rum. Barter begins, wary, but civil. A peculiar moment unfolds when one of them produces a carved idol, pressing it into a sailor's hand with solemnity. "Luck," he says in broken tongue. The crew laughs uneasily, unsure if it is gift or trap. The idol passes hand to hand, its smooth wood warm from strange fingers. Yet beneath the surface, suspicion lingers. Eyes dart, hands hover near blades. A coin purse vanishes mysteriously, and accusations spark quickly hushed by officers who know how easily tension can ignite bloodshed. The visitors smile too easily, their laughter edged. You sense danger coiled like a rope about to snap. Historians debate whether these exchanges were more often peaceful or predatory. Some describe thriving trade networks built on such meetings. Others recount ambushes and betrayals. Watching the men now, you see how thin the line is between generosity and theft. At last, the visitors return to their boat, goods exchanged, smiles plastered. The idol remains, tucked in a pocket. The crew exhales collectively as the longboat pulls away, the other ship turning back to the horizon. Relief washes the deck, though nerves remain taut. You realize that survival at sea is not only about storms and hunger, but about reading men whose faces you may never see again. Night falls heavy, lanterns glow, hammocks sway, yet whispers persist. Were they traders? Pirates? Scouts for something larger? The idol lies hidden, its presence a reminder that encounters never vanish cleanly, they linger, carved into memory, perhaps into fate. As you close your eyes, rocked by the ship's slow rhythm, you think of how thin the veneer of civility is when wood and water are all that separate you from strangers. At sea, every meeting is gamble, every handshake shadowed by the possibility of a blade. The idol from the visitors still rests hidden in a pocket, its smooth surface whispered about in corners of the ship. Some men stroke it for luck, others eye it warily, convinced it carries a curse. But soon, gossip drifts into fresh fears. The sea has gone strangely still, the horizon blank, the sails sagging, and when stillness settles on a ship, stories begin to swell. It is well attested in maritime lore that sailors filled the void of knowledge with myth. In the Middle Ages, maps brimmed with monsters, dragons, leviathans, serpents coiled beneath the waves. Tonight, under a sky too calm, you hear those beasts come alive in the sailors' voices. One man whispers of a kraken, its arms long enough to drag a ship whole beneath the waves. Another insists he saw glowing eyes once, far below, watching from the deep. The youngest sailor shivers, clutching a charm at his neck. You sense the crew's unease grow heavier than the calm air itself. A peculiar tale spreads of mermaids, sometimes beautiful, sometimes grotesque, who sang sailors into madness. One man swears his cousin followed such a voice, leaping from the rail, vanishing into foam. Others scoff, yet their eyes linger on the water nervously. Even laughter cannot banish the possibility of something waiting beneath. Historians still dispute how sincerely sailors believed in these creatures. Some claim the monsters were metaphors, exaggerated tales spun for land-bound audiences. Others argue sailors truly saw shapes in the waves, mistaking whales or squids for demons. Watching the men now, you believe belief itself matters more than truth. Out here, with no land in sight, a shadow in the water can become anything the mind fears. The ship rocks faintly, though no wind drives it. Silence presses in, broken only by the creak of timbers, the lap of listless waves. Every sound feels magnified. A rat scurrying, a rope groaning, a sailor's nervous cough. In that silence, imagination thrives. You catch yourself staring into the black water, half expecting something vast to rise. An odd ritual begins. A sailor tosses a crust of bread into the sea, murmuring it will distract whatever lurks below. Another spits thrice, warning that showing teeth to the deep invites attack. You almost laugh, but stop when you realize how solemn their faces are. Superstition is not play here. It is armor against the unknown. Suddenly, a splash echoes nearby. All heads turn, muscles tense, eyes straining in the dark. Was it a fish? A wave? Or something else? The silence that follows is worse than the sound itself. Hearts beat faster, breath shortens. The calm sea feels alive, watching. You remember medieval bestiaries, illustrated with beasts no scholar had seen but every sailor swore existed. Dragons curling around ships, whales mistaken for islands, serpents rising in coils taller than masts. Those pages once seemed quaint. Now, staring into infinite blackness, they feel like warnings rather than fantasies. Hours pass, and no monster comes. The sea remains silent, the air heavy, the crew restless. Yet the fear does not fade. It lingers, woven into every glance, every whispered prayer. You realize monsters need not exist to haunt men. Belief alone shapes them from shadows. When dawn breaks, the water gleams innocent, the horizon unchanged. Some men laugh at their fear, others mutter that the sea hides what it chooses. The idol is brought out briefly, touched by rough hands, then tucked away again. Protection or curse, it remains both. As you breathe the new day's air, you reflect. Sailors' lives balance constantly between the real and the imagined. Hunger, thirst, storm, these are tangible enemies. But just as powerful are the unseen, the beasts of maps, the whispers of superstition, the shadows that rise when the sea grows still. You lean on the rail, scanning the waves. Nothing moves, nothing surfaces. Yet deep inside, you feel what the others feel. The certainty that something vast lies below, unseen but not absent. The sea does not need to show its monsters. It only needs to remind you they could be there. The sea stays heavy with calm for another day. The sails drooping, the ropes slack. By evening, a faint breeze stirs, carrying with it a promise of movement, and the crew exhales as though released from invisible chains. Yet with the easing of fear comes a shift of mood. Men grow talkative, and stories bloom like sparks in dry straw. This is how history travels at sea, not in books or letters, but in the crackle of voice and laughter, in tales stretched by salt air. Medieval sailors, according to scattered accounts, lived as much in story as in toil. They repeated legends of past voyages, mixed with gossip of ports, woven together until memory and myth blurred. Tonight you hear those voices, carried across the deck. One man recounts the tale of a ship swallowed whole by a whale, its crew living for days in the belly before cutting their way out. Another swears he once saw a sea on fire, flames dancing across waves after a bolt of lightning struck. The younger sailors lean forward, eyes wide, while older ones smirk knowingly. Truth matters little. The telling itself binds them. A peculiar practice takes shape as the stories unfold. Each man adds a fragment, reshaping the tale, exaggerating details until it belongs to everyone. What began as one sailor's account of a storm becomes a saga of thunder gods battling overhead. A memory of hunger shifts into a legend of cursed bread. Even the idol from the traders reappears in story, growing in size and power with every telling, until it is said to whisper warnings in the night. Historians still dispute how accurately sailors' stories can be trusted. Some argue they were honest attempts at record, skewed only by failing memory. Others believe they were deliberate performances, crafted to entertain and impress when men returned ashore. Listening now, you suspect both. Stories are half shield, half lantern, hiding fear while keeping hope alive. The laughter grows, then softens, as one old sailor begins a quieter tale. He speaks of a voyage years past, where men vanished one by one, claimed by sickness or storm, until only a handful staggered into port. His voice carries weight, less boast than confession. The deck falls silent. You feel the story sink into every chest, a reminder that beneath laughter lies the truth of risk. And then, as though to shake off the heaviness, another man leaps into a bawdy ballad, describing impossible feasts and impossible lovers. The crew roars with laughter, the tension dissolving. In the swing from solemn to absurd, you glimpse the strange resilience of men at sea. They bend constantly, but refuse to break. You lie back against the rail, listening, letting the stories wash over you. They are not history as scholars know it, but they are history as sailors lived it alive, shifting, whispered against the dark. Perhaps centuries from now, someone will read only fragments of these lives. But tonight, the stories live whole, spoken under a swaying lantern, carved into memory deeper than any logbook. As the voices fade and men drift toward their hammocks, you remain awake a little longer, staring at the horizon. You think of everything you have endured aboard this wooden world: hunger, thirst, storm, vermin, punishment, madness. You think of the laughter, the prayers, the songs, the whispered fears of monsters, and you realize that to live at sea is to live inside a story, one stretched thin across endless water. The waves murmur against the hull, steady and calm, like the closing of a book. You draw in the salt air, heavy but familiar, and let your eyes slip shut. Tomorrow will bring its own trials. But tonight, you carry these voices into sleep, their rhythm steadier than the sea. Now, as the tale drifts towards silence, you feel the pace soften. The ship no longer heaves with storm, nor creaks with hunger, nor trembles with fear. It rocks gently, like a cradle upon the dark water. Lantern light flickers dimly, its glow folding into shadow, and the sea sighs with a rhythm steady as breath. You sense the crew lying quiet in their hammocks, their stories finished for now, their quarrels stilled. The rats rustle faintly, the ropes hum in the night breeze, but even these sounds fall into calm. The ship itself seems to rest, as though it too exhales after long labor. Imagine yourself there, curled in canvas, the sway soothing, the smells no longer sharp but distant. The voices of sailors linger like echoes, softened by time, their songs now whispers carried into the dark. The fears of storms and monsters fade, replaced by the steady heartbeat of waves. You feel it beneath you, a pulse older than any map or tale. And in this moment, the sea is not enemy or prison. It is vast, yes, and unknowable, but also tender, carrying you towards sleep. The stars shimmer overhead, distant yet faithful, and you realize they have watched every voyage, every sailor, every story. They watch you now, patient and calm. So breathe slowly. Let your mind drift with the tide, your body sway with the hammock. The journey is long, but for now, there is peace. The sea cradles you, the night enfolds you, and the voices of the past hum you toward rest. Sweet dreams.